Hey guys, sorry about the short notice. Nobody's here yet, so we'll see if anybody pops in. But good morning, everybody. We do have a motions hearing coming up. So let's see. I think it's scheduled for 15 minutes from now, 10 o'clock. I'm going to plug in my power cord too. How's everybody doing today? I went to Dedham yesterday, so that was fun, and I got to meet some really interesting people and people with a lot of information on this case. Okay, still setting things up. All right. So we will, God willing, live stream this today. Good morning, Caitlin. Hi, Busty. Sorry about the lack of notification. Again, this is how a lot of these will be. We will be covering the trial, and we will be streaming the trial, I should say. Be more clear about that. We will stream the trial every day. So even in the first week of May, I have some medical scans and treatments going on, but we will take care of it. Tom Fleming may be doing some of these or someone else that helps us out. So, but they will be on. Fear not. All right, so let's see if we can. Oh, we still got time. I'm hoping this is going to be on the Law and Crime Network so I can stream it from there. And I'll also have on Fox 25. But if worse comes to worse, we'll go jump in on the Glairer, the grifter himself, or maybe on the Jellyfish, since they can't stop it. All right, so yesterday, just reading the comments, any signs of JLR. So people can watch Tom's CPU if you like. So yesterday, I arrived in Dedham. What a beautiful town. What a beautiful old New England colonial town. The courthouse is beautiful, but every building there is pre-Revolutionary War in that downtown area. You can tell by looking at them. They have those old style, big white chimneys. I mean, I don't know if any movies have been filmed there, but that's just an ideal movie set. I mean, it's really a beautiful little town. And so as I pulled up, I'm walking towards the barrier that marks the end of the buffer zone. And as I get there, um, one of the zombies turns around and spots me coming. I was in disguise. I put on glasses, sunglasses. His he kind of was like looking like, "Hey, is that? Is that?" And then I saw the dawning in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. And I just said, "Hey, how are you?" And he's like, "Hi." I walked past them, and so I don't know. There was only about 7 or 8 of them, mostly women. I think. I think Rita Lombardi was there, and I guess Tom's CPU was there, but I actually didn't recognize him. Had I saw him there, I might have stopped to talk just because I know he's always covering this case, because later on from the reports, it sounds like he was there, but I didn't see him. I actually thought it was just this tall guy and all women. I'm not, I'm not saying that to insult anybody. That just was my quick impression walking by. And when I got about 20 feet past, they all started yelling, "Plevin, fuck you, Plevin, fuck you." And I just turned around and I smiled. And I was like, "Guys, we're outside a courthouse. Show some respect." And I turned around and kept walking, and they just kept yelling my name. Well, what I didn't know was at some point they decided to follow me to see what was going on, just because there was nothing at that time. This was 12:30, so at that time there was nothing else interesting going on. So this is my first time in Dedham, my first time at the courthouse. I didn't try to go into the courthouse. So as I got and now this buffer zone is people get the idea that it's this big buffer zone. No, I mean, if you were at the cones, the edge of the buffer zone, and you were having a conversation at a normal voice with somebody else, if somebody was inside the courthouse and the window was open and they were near, they'd be able to hear you. I mean, it's very close there, so it's not some big buffer zone. So, anyways, I got in front of the courthouse. There's no traffic on the street, not a single car really. I mean, it was just a very quiet, a little bit drizzly that morning, and there were whatever, maybe 6 state troopers. I think they were mostly troopers out on the street, just in, outside. And there was one officer of some kind on the stairs before you get into the court. So I just kind of wanted to see what it was like downtown there. So I walked through the buffer zone, got to the other side. Now I was meeting someone there, which I'll tell you in a moment. This is because that was fun, one of the fun parts of the story. So I get out to the other end of the buffer zone where there's no protesters there. And I walked another block up just to see what's downtown. Is there a place to eat? It's a very quaint old New England town. And so then I turned around because I was meeting Kate Peters. um, so I basically called her up, where are you? And she had already driven through and didn't see me. So she must have circled around. And like I said, there was almost no cars out there. So I walked back, and now I walk again into the buffer zone. And this is at the point that I see the horde kind of coming in my direction, but I didn't know it's because they had followed me, wondering what I was up to. And so I stopped in front of the courthouse, and I had like a little pack on that had my laptop in it, little carrying case. And one of the state troopers was walking towards me, or I thought was walking towards me. Sorry, just getting a message, making sure it's not my mic down or something again. No, it's from Verizon. Um, and I thought the trooper was walking towards me. So I looked at him. I said, hey, I'm not a protester. And he smiled and he says, I know. What he was following was the horde had just passed me, and they were following me, but didn't want to stop next to me. So they took a right on the side street next to the court and went down and then turned around. So what the trooper understood that I didn't was that they were following me. So they got back and passed me again, but this time they kind of stopped near me because they didn't know what to do, and they were like saying, and I was on the phone again, and I was on the phone with Kate, and they're like, "Are you on the phone with Coffin Dapper?" Or they created some kind of weird derogatory twist of the name, and I was like, "No." I just kind of they were to me it was fun. They're just so silly, you know. And and then they were like, "Are you on the phone with Kate?" I'm like, "Yes." And then Kate pulled up, so I went around and got in her car. Oh my God, they love that, Plevin getting in the car with Kate. And I guess later on, though, the way they told the story, they made it sound like me and Kate were running down alleys to get away from him. I don't know why anybody would run from them. I don't think they're capable of running. And Kate never got out of her vehicle. She just pulled over and I got in. And then we did actually go to meet uh, Jen Coffindaffer and Gretchen Voss and some other people. And it was a real honor and pleasure to meet them. This is the first time I met Kate in person. I've spoken to her on the phone. She's really bright, so I love talking to her on the phone. And she knows this case. Nobody knows this case perfectly. Everybody has their pieces of the puzzle, but I don't think anybody has more pieces than Kate. And sorry, just turning off my messages. So it was a pleasure to meet Kate, and we drove up to a restaurant in a nearby town to meet the others. And so it was obviously my first time meeting all of them. And Jen Coffindaffer was very smart and very sweet and very nice. Um, and Gretchen Voss, like you'd expect from a reporter. She's obviously very bright, but outgoing and entertaining and tells a good story. You could tell if she was at a party, she'd be at the center of the room telling stories, and everybody would be paying attention. Gretchen's like one of those people, if she walks in a room, you're probably paying attention, just the way it is. So it was kind of cool to be the only guy having lunch with these 5 really intelligent women, really intelligent and really interesting women. So I don't get to experience that much anymore. Back in the day, I was more like that, but it was fun. So it was great for me to do that. And just I learned a lot of little things about the case. Maybe we're all kind of sharing information. And then based on some of the things that I learned, I went out last night and checked it with other resources. And some of the things I was able to affirm, and some things I was able to maybe get updated information. So it was really interesting. It was really good to meet these people. Um, Jen Coffindaffer has either left or is leaving town today. So she's done with it. Um, but she is going to be coming on this channel Monday night, and I think with Kate has said she'll do it. So it'll be the 3 of us. Maybe we'll get someone else on. But I really like to have. We want to go over the opening statements that were made. All right, so guys, as we're getting closer to 10, let me do a quick check to see if anybody besides the glare is covering this. And you guys can let me know. I will gladly go. Law and Crime was great when they cover it because the audio was really good. Oh, they are doing it. Okay, excellent. So we will go to that. Outstanding. It's always nice to not have to go to the Grifters channel. Let's make sure the volume is all up. All right, so we're here when the hearing begins. We're right here. I don't know how long this hearing will be, but there are motions that I'm going to go over. For instance, talking about moving to the smaller courtroom, but there may be other things too. You know, uh, oh, Roberta Glass is here. My mother listens to your show every night. She's a huge fan. I had time to listen to the show that you did. Who did you had on? You had on a guest. It was a really good show. I can't. It was a woman from. Oh, I can't remember the name of what channel it was from, but it was maybe 4 days ago, and it was a really good show. My mother listens to all your shows. That's a time where I'm usually going to the gym that your shows are on. Like, that was Tuesday. Is that? Yes, thank you. That was it. That was it. So, if you'd ever like to come on here or have me come on there, that would be a thrill for my mother. So I'd appreciate it, because she listens to all your shows. So that would be if you ever want me to come on for a few minutes or come on here, that would be great. Was Oh, I actually reached out to you like last week on Facebook, but I messaged you there, but I don't think you probably checked your Facebooks. A lot of people focus on Instagram or something like that. That was the only way to contact you. Or my mom, I reached out. She she likes your temperament, that you cover it in a way, not getting excited. Um, every once in a while, I get excited, and they don't like that. So, but for the people that don't like me getting angry, I apologize. But most of the people that are regulars, they know that I'm very even-tempered and I try to cover things objectively from both sides. It's an interesting thing about covering this case. Where should the line be? So I'm someone that likes to always see things down the middle, objectively, and report it that way, and avoid getting into the mud if possible. But I'm also someone that really, really hates bullying. In fact, I have to admit that if I had been there yesterday when that JRS or whatever he is, if I saw him and I felt like he was a threat to Karen, I might have stepped in and grabbed that guy. I've done that all my life. It's not something I can even really control. I don't like bullying. I In the first grade, when the tough kids were all picking on this quadriplegic girl, I got into fights with them. First grade, and I'm not a fighter. I just In college, same thing. I mean, I don't like bullying. So I don't know. It's probably a good thing that I wasn't there. But so anyways, when I see the bullying that goes on in this case by Turtle Boy, and really all of them, all these grifters that are calling innocent people, even if you suspect there was something strange going on in this case, there's no evidence at all to be accusing the McCabe's or the Alberts of being murderers. And Colin's just a college kid that the data shows wasn't there. So the way these people are treated by people like Sean and by Turtle, by the grifter, by Young Jelly, I find it unacceptable. And there are a few other ones that I haven't named, but I can't, so people get upset that some people get upset that I give them these little names like that. But to me, it bothers me because what they're doing is grifting purely. They're willing to sacrifice any possible integrity they might have ever had in their life in order to make money, get subscribers, going with a conspiracy theory. And it's effective because the national news is interested in that too. And to me, I'm going after the feds really hard here too, because I consider them to be the biggest bully there is. And what they've done in interfering in this case is at best improper and possibly much worse than that. And we need to get to the bottom of it. And so I'm hitting the feds very hard. Now there were FBI agents that I know, and now I know Jen. I met her yesterday, but there are other FBI agents that I know. They're good people and who really think that the main part of their job was to protect this country from terrorism. And we need them. We need those people. We need those agents doing that. There are thousands of agents like that out there that are protecting this country. But when you get these other types that have ambitions of moving up the chain, their focus is not always protecting the country. It's their own advancement. And the power of the federal government is vast, and they're unaccountable. They're able to get our information without getting subpoenas or warrants. Why? Because when they request it from the communication companies, those companies typically just hand it over. So there's no paper trail. And the feds look at that information, and if they decide it's useful, they keep it. If they decide it's not, they throw it out. And we have no idea that they used it. So it's really a problem. So as you can see, guys, it's on the court. As soon as it begins, we'll be here, and you'll be able to hear it. We're streaming from the Law and Crime Network. And the Law and Crime Network has excellent audio. So let's just go in and say hi to everybody. Our moderator, Tom Fleming, does not seem to be here. He didn't get a warning from me, so he'll probably catch on at some point and like, oh. But Tom, you guys will get to meet Tom Fleming in person tonight. Well, in the virtual person tonight, because we're doing an NFL draft show tonight. So me, Tom Fleming, Dave McGrath, and also this Brian Vick, a friend of mine who is like an like Dave McGrath is an encyclopedia of true crime. This guy is an encyclopedia of sports knowledge. And, he's in New York City. He's a bartender out there and an actor. So he's a semi-professional actor, and he's just a great guy to listen to. And he really is knowledgeable about sports. Now he is in most ways a New York sports fan, but he hates their football teams. He's actually a Raiders fan. So if we have any Raiders fans out there, be happy to talk to you. So let's see. I just want to say hi to people that are here. So I already said hi to Busty and Caitlin. Hi, Lori. Good to see you. Kathy Chapin, thank you. Thank you for being here. Noel, thank you. We missed you too. But I will be here every day of the trial. I do have some treatments and scans in May, but someone else will be taking over it. So the channel will be up and streaming the trial. So Turtle Boy is questioning my cancer again yesterday. I get a message from Lauren De Laguna saying, "You lied about having cancer." Oh, these people are insane. A couple of weeks ago, someone was on chat doing that, so I logged into my Mass General Hospital patient portal, to show them. I scrolled, brought it up on the screen and showed it. Not that it's anybody's business, but I mean, I feel good. I'm doing good, but I have been very lucky. I was diagnosed stage 4 lung cancer in 5.5 years ago. So what year is that? 2018, 2017? I'm not even sure. I think maybe let's say 2000. It's 5.5 though. So only about 1% of people diagnosed with stage 4 are lucky enough to last that amount of time. Maybe it's because I keep busy. Well, listen, the main reason was because I'm on a targeted therapy that stabilizes the cancer. And that targeted therapy is very effective. It's a great modern medicine. It's specific for my particular type of lung cancer. And it's it doesn't eradicate the cancer. So remission is not the word, but it stabilizes it. And that's just as good as far as I'm concerned. So, in fact, the symptoms that I had back then, a lot of it cleared up. The pain mostly went away. I was in a lot because I had lesions all over my body. Those lesions are still there, but they're shrunk and they're basically dormant at this stage. So, I did begin finally. Now, on average, that medicine works 18 months, but that means you can be bad luck and get only 3 months, or in my case, be the other end and win the lottery and get 5 years. It did finally begin to go into progression in my scans in early February. And so it's that time where the cancer is adapting to the medicine. And so I had to go through a week of radiation treatments in March, and then the scans come up in May. And so they're hoping that that one area that it was progressing, that the radiation got it. And then you'll get more time. So I would love to be able to have another solid year off this medicine. And then you hope that more breakthroughs. There are breakthroughs for those of you guys who have cancer or have your families have cancer. Someone in your family has cancer. The breakthroughs are coming. It just takes time. It takes time, but there's really good stuff coming. So when I first was diagnosed, I was like, if I can just be in that 1% that lasts 5 years, maybe there'll be that next breakthrough. Well, I lasted the 5, but that really big breakthrough isn't quite here yet. So it may not have made a difference, but I took a proactive stance. Like, in addition to that medicine, I'm going to try to find everything I can on my own research to fight it. So I take a lot of supplements, but there's no way of knowing if any of that makes any difference at all, if it increased my odds. But I've also been very busy ever since. I was busy before that, but when I was diagnosed, I've written novels, screenplays, launched YouTube channels, a lot. So I've been extremely busy the entire time. And I think maybe that helps, is staying busy. So saying hi again, Kathy Chapman, Turtle Slayer, hi, Paisley Doodle, good morning. Mickey Magora, are you going to scream? Yep, you're here with us. Mickey, that's a new name though. Thank you for being here. Oh, um, sorry, that was just a message coming in. Put this up here. So I guess that was just a quick message from Gretchen, and she said, it was good to meet yesterday, and I had incorrectly said she worked for the Globe, but she just works for Boston Magazine. To me, the Boston Magazine is part of the Globe, so I don't know, because it comes with our boss. We subscribe to the Globe, but she's an excellent writer, so hopefully she'll come on the show sometime and discuss one of her other. She doesn't just cover. She's not just covering Karen Reed. She covers a lot of stuff, and she's not just a writer. She's an investigative reporter. So hopefully we'll be able to get her on and talk about some of her work. And it was really interesting in this case because she was telling us yesterday, she really came into this knowing nothing about the case. And she contacted Turtle Boy and met him at his house, did the interview there. Then the same with Karen Reed. Then the next step was to reach out to the Alberts and the McCabe's, and they were reluctant because they knew she had talked to Turtle and thought maybe she was working with Turtle. But eventually they did talk to her, and so now she's very plugged into what's going on in that community and with those families. And those families are victims now. So Barbie talks about the commie pink. Yeah, that's true. It is kind of Hillbilly Nitro. Thanks. Good to see you. Crazy Cat. Oh, I got to send you that video. Good to see your name there. I'm sorry. Maybe while the hearing starts, I'll send you that video. Kat wants the animation that I had made last September. Now, just to be sure, it sounds like Kat. In that video, I speculated that John was bent over picking up his phone or a cocktail glass, and it hit him in the back of the vehicle hit him in the back of the head. But it sounds like that's not what the state's theory is. I think it sounds like the vehicle hit him midsection and caused trauma injury to the pancreas, but we don't know how the head injury occurred. So that's the key. Good morning, Jules. To see if anybody I missed. Coffee Kristen, hi. Hopefully Tom Fleming has his coffee and is turning in. Comfort and Joy, good to see you as always. And JD says, Kevin, you hitched yourself to a crazy train. Well, I'm covering a crazy train. I know that's not what you're meaning, but crazy train is soon to be destroyed. And the tide really has turned. I've talked to people who were on the really at the heart of the storm last summer and in the fall, but it's turned. And even police last summer, for instance, Boston police, sounds like if you poll them internally, it might have been a split on this case. Not anymore. Really, it seems like very few people in law enforcement still believe in the conspiracy because of evidence. And that's the difference between the free Karen Read zombies and everybody else. They don't care about evidence. And there's no amount of evidence that is sufficient to make them start asking questions because it was never anything that they were interested in. And so, again, Roberta will maybe do a good job at inspiring me to be more not balanced, but calm instead of getting upset, because that's what my mom likes, right? But what's the right thing here? Where do you? I respect people that believe Karen is innocent, but are still asking questions, and they're respectful to other people, and they're not making wild accusations against people. I respect that. So I do not, and I say this all the time, when I talk about the free Karen Read zombies, I'm not talking about all the people who have questions about this case. No, not at all. I'm not talking about people who say, well, maybe there's enough here to get reasonable doubt. That's rational, especially at this point before we've even seen the evidence of the trial. But at some point, it does really frustrate me when I have someone like Rita Lombardi, I guess she was in that little mob yesterday following me around. I'm not sure. I don't recognize these people, but that's what I'm told. For people to go out there and say Karen Read is 100% innocent, I can't respect that because the evidence is so compelling against her, and the evidence for a conspiracy, there's just no evidence for it. The feds, at this point, anybody looking closely at what the feds found, anybody looking closely at that would say that was actually inculpatory to Karen. It tended to show she did it because they looked hard and they found no evidence of a conspiracy at all. So, and the idea that people cling to on that side that, well, they found it, but they're holding on to it, and they're gonna, like Sean would say, that they're gonna storm in any minute and stop this trial. That's nuts. And people say they're not required to give over their evidence. No, they are, because they signed a protective order promising to give over all relevant evidence to both sides. So they did. And both sides have said that they're confident that the feds gave them everything. The defense has said that too. So it's not rational to believe that the feds still have some exculpatory piece of evidence for Karen or some evidence of a conspiracy. They don't. It's just not even normal to think about it. Looking through to see who else. Did I say Iona? Iona? Did I say hi, Fiona? Fiona, good. Thank you for being here. You're always here with us. Um, Looking through to see where old friend Tom is. Hi, Carol W. You get to meet Tom tonight, 7:30, NFL Draft. Andy Dufresne. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. I think that's what you're naming yourself after. Let's see, checking through. So we got a good crowd here for a morning show, an unannounced morning show. Thank you for being here, guys. Pat, good to see you. So Pat says, Kevin, if a bully responds to another bully with the same tactics, that's hard to grab that guy. I get it. I do get it. What, but I don't know. It just, I, I'm repulsed by what Karen has done and allowing. It's one thing to mount a defense, but it's another thing to point a finger at innocent people like she has, calling them murderers. So I'm repulsed by what she's done, and I don't like watching her march into court like a movie star every day. But at the same time, she is still a woman in her 40s. She's has health issues, and if somebody was intimidating her, I wouldn't be able to stop myself from standing up. So I guess it's good that I wasn't there because I might have got arrested. I don't know. It's like I said, it's just kind of a reaction. I see somebody getting bullied. I have just a visceral reaction to it, and it's been that way all my life. I don't even know why because I was never bullied, and um, nobody in my family was. So I don't really know why. I just all the way back. I remember that in the first grade. That girl kind of became my first girlfriend. She was calling me all the time. It used to drive me crazy just because I was defending her at recess. Hey, Colin up in Canada. Good to see you. Rhodes says that JLR has a press pass. Huh. Interesting. I guess that's his stick is going around to these different areas and doing kind of an ambush journalism thing. I don't know. I don't know where the line is. I'm happy to see him do it to Turtle Boy because Turtle Boy does it to everybody else. But I don't like the idea of him going to Turtle Boy's the house of his family or I don't know if he went to his parents or his where his kids are. I mean, those people are innocent. Leave them alone. But Lavish Love says she truly believes the mind can do amazing things. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Obviously, the only thing I hesitate, and I do believe that, but I hesitate to like say that because there are some people that have this disease, and I don't want them to feel like that. Ultimately, you have to succumb to it, and it's not mind over matter. Ultimately, the disease wins until medicine catches up. So it's not that their minds are weaker. It's just the disease is like that. And the main thing that is helping me is medicine that's beating this, the modern medicine. If this was if I had got this disease, the medicine that I'm on was approved less than a year before I was on it. Had it so it was around for several years before that doing clinical trials. I don't know if I could have got into those. But if you go back 10 years, the cancer I had, I would have been dead within months. It was all through my body. My lungs were filled with fluids. It was, so really amazing medicine. Good morning, Eldon. I told my friends yesterday that I met out there about you, that you had some very entertaining stuff. Steve says thanks for the coverage. Steve, and I just want to apologize too, Steve. I don't go into the yellow cottage tales on Facebook that often. So I know sometimes you've messaged me there and I probably haven't replied. It's just because there's so much acidic hate that comes in that page that sometimes you're sitting there like, there's better things I can do at my time. But I always, you can always reach me here. If you contact me on my regular Facebook page, which is under my name, that's probably a better way, Kevin Lenihan. I will respond every day to every message. And of course, you can email me too. Jules lost is talking about her parents. I believe Jules lost both their parents within the last year, so it was a difficult thing for her. And Jules is by nature a fighter, and I'm sure it was frustrating to go through that, losing your parents. It's a helpless feeling for everybody, but especially for a fighter when there's nothing you can do. Emily Suzanne down in Tennessee said that she jumped into Free Karen Read chat. They are exhausting, and they don't have the capacity to understand how people come to a different conclusion. Julie's here from Indiana. Hi, Julie. And Frank says, thank you for balanced talk and not forcing us to follow you. I can't, I don't know how I can force someone to follow me. If I could do that, I'd get better numbers. But Frank kind of joined us a couple of months ago, and what he wanted was balanced, objective, informative talk. That's what he came right out and said, that's what I'm looking for. So I feel really good that we've been able to hold on to him. It means we're doing that. And that is definitely, though, having a little bit of fun occasionally talking about young jelly or something like that. Mostly what I want to do is give people this objective analysis, and it's my analysis, so it's not always going to be correct on every issue. So, but I'm aspiring to objective, honest analysis, and I think that's what everybody here also does and what they're looking for. Roberta says the tide is turning. Yeah, big time. It's turned locally too, in Canton. My understanding is in some ways a peak was last August. Nobody was standing up to anything. Actually, family members were telling me that it was almost like a tearful moment when they saw me go after Turtle Boy in what is known as the outburst episode. That's what people that are mad at me call it. When I had an outburst against Turtle Boy back in August, and it was just because nobody had ever gone after him before, except for Kate, obviously. But Kate's feud goes back with him longer, so people understood that. But to see someone that was not Kate, someone else, finally join the fight. Kate's been fighting the good fight against him for a long time. And I'm sure she has personal reasons, but I think also Kate is really smart, and she will tell you, and this is what I've said on my own too, is that it's this phenomena that has to be stopped, like what they did to Kerry yesterday. Going after and trying to destroy her job, destroy the doctor that she works for. It's crazy what these people do. And I believe that it may be Susan Arundel that seems to be able to compile all this information on people and, getting people's divorced records, their medical history, anything. So I don't know. I mean, Kate's way is to fight fire with fire. I mean, I'm a little more cautious in that because I kind of my way is to try to convince people. But maybe sometimes Kate is right on this. The only way to fight some of these people is to fight fire with fire. Let's see, let's see somebody else get into Susan Arundel's background. Let's see what she's all about. Maybe she doesn't care because that video of her walking down the courthouse stairs last summer, one of the funniest things I've seen. She's got a thermos in her hand, and the young trooper looks up at her like, wow, do you need help, man? She's in high heels and she's clearly drunk. So I don't know what was in the thermos, but she must have been drinking clear liquid, probably vodka, in court. So she obviously is not someone that you're going to be able to silence her by embarrassing her. She has no ability to be embarrassed. She doesn't care what anybody thinks. So I don't know. How do you stop people like that? Steve Thompson is elated that the trial is finally going to get going. Top Gear says, why is the judge dragging her feet? I don't think that the judge is. I think what happened was, first of all, they were expecting that the jury selection might take up to 2 weeks, and they ended up moving faster. So they had a little bit more time. But the big thing, too, was Turtle Boy did the interview, 20-minute interview on his, I don't know if it's his last show, but maybe 4 or 5 days, last weekend, I guess. He did a 20-minute interview with a juror that a prospective juror that almost made it to the jury before finally getting dismissed. And she was a free Karen Read juror. And she almost got on. And then she said that there was someone else that was a free Karen Read juror that did get on. So I think all this information was sent to the judge, and the judge realized. So since then, 5 more jurors that were on the jury have been dismissed. Now, that may have been because of hardship, but they're taking a close look at all these people to find out. So you got to make sure that they're going to be unbiased. Make sure they haven't participated in social media on one side or another. The retired lieutenant said, "You are a voice of sanity. Thank you." I'm curious if you must be police lieutenant, right? But we do have fire lieutenants. But thank you for being here. JM17, could her tires have slipped in the snow, causing the vehicle data? I always wondered that same question myself. Could that have could tire spinning have resulted in the 23 mile? But we have to get experts up there and hear what they say. But I have asked that same question, and I've asked it on the show. Most questions that people have, I've either heard or asked myself before, because I've been doing multiple shows on this now for a long time. 3 cents says, "Hi, sorry for a silly question. When does the trial of Karen start?" All right, opening statements are scheduled for Monday. So I think you'll get opening arguments from both sides, and then my guess is that Tuesday you go to the evidence. I don't think we'll see any evidence. So I think typically opening arguments are allowed to be 90 minutes. So you'll probably get, the process is slow. It's not like a TV thing. So it's not like, court begins at 9 and the jurors come in and the opening arguments begin at 9:05. No, and, and even if it's 90 minutes, but there may be objections and stuff like that. So that won't count against those 90 minutes. So the opening arguments may in reality be 2 hours. And so they probably have the prosecution goes first. They'll be in the morning, and then they'll probably take a break, and then you do the opening arguments for the defense. And then probably not till Tuesday, you'll start getting the evidence and the witnesses. The retired lieutenant says, "If Sean is an example of our best, we are in trouble." I agree. There's something really odd that's going on with Sean. I put out an article yesterday asking the question if he's a confidential informant for the FBI. Now, I'm not saying he is, but his posts are so strange. It's not just that they're biased to one side, and his batting record is like 0, but yet he keeps putting it out there. And at some point you say, wait a minute, is he doing this on purpose? Like a PR person or something like that? But he's not a professional PR person. So he's in law enforcement. Now I've talked to other federal sources that it's not uncommon, not common, but not uncommon for retired federal officials to be hired as CIs, confidential informant, for the FBI. Now, this informant thing could be informant. The word CI, informant, is a little bit, can be deceiving because it means that they're giving information, generally an informant, right? Like somebody who's penetrated a gang or something like that. But that's not the only way it's used. And this is disturbing. And I want to see this more and more highlighted because it's a problem when, like I said, the tyranny of the federal government is that a CI can also basically mean an asset. Now, the CIA hires assets. The CIA is working outside of the United States. And so it's legal for them to hire assets. Let's say they have a guy in Iran that is there to stir things up. When you can debate whether that's right or wrong, but that's how they operate. The FBI should not be able to do that, but they are. They have these assets that are there. They're technically informants, but they play a more active role to try to plant ideas, for instance, about terrorism or something like that, so they can swoop in. But as the more and more they're involved with this, they're using these assets also to stir up information. Now, why would the feds want to stir up information about the Karen Reed case? Well, there's no legitimate good reason for that if that's the case. But there's compelling indirect evidence that there's no question there are people inside either the FBI or the U.S. Attorney's Office that are not only helping Karen Reed's defense, but helping her PR campaign, helping her get information out there that will steer the debate. And that's extremely improper. I would think that parts of that are illegal, but I don't really know. But someone has to pay Someone has to be accountable for that in the federal government. All right. And I'm not expecting them to come on this show and explain it to us, but at some point, the media has to hold the real media, big media. It's clearly it's not going to be Ted Daniel. He's compromised, but somebody out there has to hold these people accountable. It's dangerous. I don't like the fact it's a it's a an endangerment to all of our rights that the feds can get our communications without subpoenas and warrants. All right, I'm going to jump to the end to see if anybody's got any updated information for me. Um, why are they still showing the clock here? Are we still waiting the hearing to begin? Does anybody have any information? I'm just checking now. So does anybody have any information about why we're still in delay here? Do I have to go to one of the idiots' channels? I'd rather have you guys be my eyes and ears. Still that. So Mel Smith, thank you for the update. Says the judge didn't come out yet. Okay, so we're waiting on the judge. And Mel said, "Are they picking one more?" I'm sorry, that was Busty that said that. I wondered if they would. I mean, we were told yesterday that they were done with the jury, so they're at 19, but they will have to whittle it down to 16. But we were told. So yesterday they dismissed 5, but added 5 more. So that they're really being careful in this process. Eric wants to know how much snow. So we don't know. Hopefully there'll be. The Canton police do not wear body cameras, but maybe a data is possible. But I don't think we're ever really going to get a picture of it. And so all we can go by is the testimony, and that snow was brushed off him before the first responders arrived there, anyways. So I think Jen McCabe had said 6 inches, but that would not. That's the mind can exaggerate things in hindsight. I don't think there was 6 inches. So if we look in the driveway video of Karen leaving at about 5 a.m. and it's starting to snow fairly heavy at that time, and it looks to me that that was about 2 inches in that driveway, 1.5 to 2 inches. I'd say 2 inches, and then it's another little more than an hour. So I would say it's a good guess that there was probably between 3 and 4 inches on John when they found him. I don't know what you guys think, if you guys agree with that. Eric, is there audio of Karen screaming? Yes. No one woke up. The audio is, but the audio tells you what you need. So I think the distance from where they were was maybe about, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 feet to the bedroom window. It's the winter, storm windows closed. The wind is howling. We can tell in the audio. So the audio I'm talking about is there is going to be 911 audio, but we actually got it from another way in that Karen was calling John when she spotted him, threw the phone down on the back seat with the phone still dialing John, and then ran out. So John's voicemail recorded what went on for the next 4 minutes, and that included Jen McCabe's 911 call. And you hear a lot of Karen kind of screaming. She's going, "Carrie, Carrie, Carrie." Now, so I think what you're saying is why wouldn't that wake anybody up inside? But the other thing you hear is the wind is howling. So I don't think her voice would have cut through that wind and made it to the house. And then definitely to make it to the house and then go through the storm windows, and then people are sleeping very soundly at that point. Yeah, I'm not surprised at all that they didn't hear that. I used to be surprised back in the summer when we first started going over this case, and it was more just learning that the first responders came in without sirens, which is normal policy for there, and giving more thought to how people sleep and how common this is in cases where serial killers go into a house and kill everybody in the house and nobody wakes up. And there are signs that they don't wake up because they're all like in the case in Amityville, they were all found sleeping, lying down on their stomachs, and he killed them all with a shotgun blast, and nobody woke up. So people all think that they're light sleep, that most of us think we're light sleepers. That's because we remember the time that some relatively light sound woke us up. But it's a distorted memory because we don't remember those times that we don't wake up. How could we? Because we didn't wake up. So that time there was a loud thunderstorm and you didn't wake up, you're not aware that you slept through it. Okay, the judge is coming in now.
All persons having business before the Honorable Beverly Canoni, Justice of the Norfolk Superior Court, you for the county of Norfolk.
So I will check out.
Massachusetts, code now open, may proceed. Commonwealth versus Reed, 2282 CR 117. Can I have the Commonwealth identify themselves for the record?
Adam Lally for the Commonwealth. Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, Mr. Lally.
Good morning, Your Honor. Laura McLaughlin for the Commonwealth.
Good morning, Ms. McLaughlin. Good morning, Ms. Gilman.
I'm sorry. Good morning, Your Honor. Alan Jackson on behalf of.
Good morning, Mr. Jackson.
Good morning, Your Honor. Elizabeth Little, also on behalf of Ms. Reed.
Good morning, Ms. Little.
And good morning, David Unetti for Karen Reed.
Good morning, Ms. Giannetti. Good morning, Ms. Reed. All right. So, Paul, can I see? Thanks. All right. What I want to start with are motions that were either allowed by agreement. I just want to make sure our record's completely accurate. And if it's not, it's my error. So motions that I have that were allowed by agreement, I may need to take 1 minute. Jim, I'll be right back.
Court, all rise. Court's in recess.
I forgot something.
Which one?
All rise, please.
All right, thank you. So, allowed by agreement or previously allowed by me. The motion eliminate to admit the 911 call, was there an objection to that? It is paper number 298.
There was no objection.
Yeah, I have that as allowed by agreement, so, okay. The motion for the court reporter 291 and impoundment of what is supposed to be impounded, that was allowed by agreement as well, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Commonwealth filed a motion regarding Zoom as opposed to webinar, and that was allowed by agreement as well, 292.
No objection.
And motion to allow in-court identification, paper 294, that was allowed by agreement as well.
No objection.
Okay. Motion eliminate to admit the victim's photograph. I have not seen which photograph you're using, but you're in agreement that about the photograph. Is that right?
Yes, yes. That won't be an issue.
I have it as allowed by agreement. Are you using one or more, or have you not decided yet?
Just one, and I provided counsel with a copy of that as well as some other things today.
Yeah.
Okay.
By agreement.
All right. Thank you. 295, Jim.
Thank
you. Commonwealth's motion eliminate to admit photographs of Mr. O'Keefe's injuries during the autopsy. We had a lot of discussion with jurors about this. This motion is allowed by agreement, correct? I'm sorry, that was 296. So Commonwealth's motion eliminate to admit the paper number 307. I believe this was allowed. Commonwealth's motion eliminate to admit defendants out of court statements for purposes of medical treatment and certified medical records from the Good Samaritan Hospital. The notation that I had written on this was that the defendant has no objection to the admission of statements made for the purpose of medical treatment and medical records. The court takes under advisement testimony regarding the blood alcohol testing because that's a separate issue, and we'll address that today. Is that your understanding of where we stand with this motion?
Yes, that's our understanding.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Jim, that was, I already said that, right? 307.
Thank you.
The use of leading questions on John O'Keefe's young niece and nephew, we'll see where we stand. I think I said to Mr. Lally, jurors would rather hear from the witness than the lawyer. So let's see how it goes. And if you think that you need to switch to leading questions, please just come to sidebar. I'll give you the leeway you need, of course, based on the child's testimony or child's manner of testifying. All right, so you were both in an agreement on what I have is 316 and the defendant's motion number paper 288 regarding any reference to Aiden Kearney, aka Turtle Boy, or his pending criminal charges for witness intimidation. So parties have agreed to not introduce this in evidence in their case in chief. If anyone opens the door, the motion will be revisited. And I think I said that I sort of disagreed with you both. I do think if witnesses testify to this spontaneously, then it comes in and it can be pursued further, but just come to sidebar. All right, 312, Commonwealth's motion to preclude reference to any bad character or any prior misconduct of the victim or any witness. That was allowed by agreement, Ms. DNA.
Do you know which motion we're talking about? Oh, yes. Oh, no, that's agreed.
That was 312, Jim.
Thank you.
313, motion eliminate to exclude character, reputation, evidence of the defendant. You're not putting in reputation evidence, right? We talked about this, Ms. Gianetti.
This is a motion to exclude good character evidence. Is that
It's paper number,
by the Commonwealth?
it was filed by the defendant, and I questioned whether you intended to put in character evidence, and you told me no.
That is accurate.
Okay, so that's allowed too, Jim.
Which one was that?
313, let me just check.
That's a Commonwealth.
It is Commonwealth's motion. It's 313, other Commonwealth date stamped, I guess, or date stamped 23.
Thank you.
There was no objection to the Commonwealth's motion eliminate to introduce certified records from the registry, correct, Ms.
Correct.
Gianetti? Okay.
Correct.
All right, and then motions that perhaps were not agreed upon, but I previously ruled on. So, or I think I ruled on them. If not, these are my rulings. 297, Commonwealth's number 7. Commonwealth's motion eliminate to preclude reference and redact the manner of death contained on the victim's death certificate. And I think I said in open court, this motion is denied as to cross-examination of the medical expert, but that undetermined language will not appear. That'll be redacted from the death certificate. You'll have the live witness here to cross-examine us to that. So, Jim, that's 297.
Yes, Your Honor.
Commonwealth's motion eliminate to prohibit reference to any federal investigations, paper 317, Commonwealth bold stamp 27, to prohibit reference to any federal investigations conducted by the U.S. Attorney's Office and or Federal Bureau of Investigations. That motion was allowed after hearing. 305 is the motion regarding chalks. We'll address that when we address the defendant's motion regarding the audiovisual person. The third party culprit, the ruling's clear on that, not in opening. That's 320-30. I think that was clear when we talked about it. All right, so those are the ones that were fairly quick to just go through. I've got another set that are sort of in the fairly quick range. And then we'll move on to the Commonwealth's discovery type motions. So first, paper 284, defendant's motion for sanctions and exclusion of evidence based on the Commonwealth's failure to timely comply with discovery orders. Mr. Jackson, you told us at sidebar the other day that you are withdrawing that motion, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
All right, so Mr. Clerk, that's motion 285, paper 285, withdrawn by counsel.
I'm sorry, Judge, 284,
Okay, I have it as 285. But
285 is the affidavit.
okay, yep, so 283,
Thank you.
withdrawn by counsel. Motion eliminate for review. So as defense counsel plainly states that a defendant is not entitled to be present at a view. And what I've determined here is that based on concerns for security issues and frankly distracting the jurors, the defendant will not be present with us on the view. And as you've stated here, that is well within my discretion. All right, Commonwealth's motion eliminate to admit defendants out of court statements as statements of a party opponent. So I think that this was one of the ones that you all agreed to. Paper 308, 18 on the top. And it's followed by paper 19 regarding the various statements made to the media, to Boston Magazine, to ABC News correspondents. So I think the defendant had said previously that you were in agreement that all these statements come in. Is that right, Ms. Gianetti?
Sorry, Your Honor. Yes, that's correct.
All right. So I had a logistical question about, I don't know how long the ABC News interview is. How long is that?
Your Honor, what I can say is as to each of those, the Commonwealth's intention would be to play, to admit the entirety of the interviews, but to only play selected portions of those interviews.
All right, because what I did, I re-listened to the nearly 4 hours, 3 hours and 40 minutes of the Boston Magazine audio, and there's no objection to it from counsel. What I listened to, it made sense, and I didn't know how you would play a 3 hour and 40 minute audio. If you think you need to, we just need time to be able to put it into the schedule.
Sure,
Okay.
but no, I don't feel the need to play the entirety of it.
Okay. I was involved in a trial once where we watched a whole movie. So just give me a heads up if you think it's a lengthy segment, but how long is the ABC interview, just in case counsel wants to go back and fill in?
I think the portions that we have are not terribly lengthy. And as far as the statements are concerned, it's even less so of that.
All right. So does defense counsel intend to also play I'm trying to find out if we're going to need a whole 3 hour and 40 minutes. I need to know that. I still haven't got an answer as to how long the Dateline or ABC, whatever it was, video and audio is. How long is the entire thing? Do you know?
You're asking me?
Either of you. I don't have that, so I didn't review it.
May I have just a moment with
Yes.
counsel?
You're right. My memory and my belief is I think, and I can't recall specifically which one is one or the other, but I think one is about 10 minutes long, the other is about 5 minutes long. And again, I would only be playing, if any, portions of, the defendant's statements, not the entirety of the broadcast.
Okay.
And if there are portions that weren't played, I would expect.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out. So I'm concerned on the 3 hour and 40 minute one, which seems to be all of it's admissible. There's no objection to it. And if, I just need to know if we're going to play something for 3 hours and 40 minutes. The other one, if it's 15 minutes, I don't need as much heads up.
My guess would be anything that we would want to present that wasn't presented would be in the 15, 20-minute
Okay,
category.
that's
Not 3
fine.
hours.
It's just for scheduling purposes. All right, so Jim,
Yes.
paper 309 and 308, they're the same pretty much. Those are allowed by agreement.
Okay.
All right, and it's sort of in the same vein. So it's, again, it's another statement of the defendant. It's the statement of the defendant at the Milton State Police Barracks that I had not seen before because it was post grand jury, and we watched it. I had the opportunity to watch what we all watched here in court last Friday, and over the weekend I watched the entire hour and a half or so of it. So you're in agreement that the statement comes in, and the Commonwealth says that the Commonwealth needs some leeway to show that she was in custody after arrest for a period of time, and Commonwealth wants to play the video. I don't think we need the video. Much of it is just looking at their computer. So the video part will be out. You don't want it in, correct?
That's correct. We had
Yes.
asked for the audio only.
Yeah. Okay. So the audio only, but it needs some context. It's not just that she's sitting down having a cup of coffee with the police and makes these statements. So they're clearly voluntary, clearly unsolicited. How do you want to work that out? Can it be that this occurred at the Milton State Police Barracks on a particular date? Because if you can't work it out, then I'll decide it.
That makes sense.
303?
Yeah, I mean, from our position, Your Honor, we don't object that the statements were made at the Milton State Police Barracks as they were. And it was in that context that she was speaking to the police at the barracks. We would object to introducing evidence that she was under arrest at that time.
Yeah, I don't think we need that. But so at the Milton State Police Barracks on a particular date.
That's acceptable.
Do you need more than that, Mr. Lally, for context?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. How is this going in?
Through the trooper to whom she was speaking.
Okay. All right. All right. So, Mr. Clerk, audio only. Commonwealth may elicit testimony. Statement occurred at the Milton State Police Barracks. Mr. Lally, do you remember the date?
June 9th, 2022.
Thank you.
22.
Yes.
Okay. So audio only, Mr. Clerk. Commonwealth may elicit testimony that the statement occurred at the Massachusetts State Police Barracks on June 9th, 2022. All right, so those are the fairly quick ones. Before we get to what I think are the more complex ones, or the ones that I need a little bit more argument from you on, I am concerned about discovery. So, Mr. Lally, when I was going through copies of what I had previously, the first time or one time that Commonwealth filed on March 21st of this year, a notice for reciprocal discovery and notice of experts. You then, last week, I think, filed a renewed motion for reciprocal discovery and request for voir dire of any defense experts. You asked that that be impounded. And that will be based on your motion, and appears to be sort of an affidavit in support. So Where do we stand with discovery?
So with reference to the reciprocal discovery, what Commonwealth is seeking is noted there are a number of witnesses listed on the defendant's witness list with no materials provided as to who these people are or what their intended testimony is. The issue with regard to experts is essentially there are 5 experts. Mr. Green, who there was an attachment to a motion with an affidavit and some materials. I think I have everything in relation to that. With regard to Dr. Sheridan, I have an affidavit and a curriculum vitae, and that's essentially it with respect to that. I just am inquiring as to whether or not there are any reports or any other sort of findings or anything post that. The other 3 experts all relate to that specific, I'm sorry. The next would be Dr. Van E, who
Which, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Dr. Christopher Van E.
Yeah.
I'm a little, so essentially there are that gentleman and then 3 individuals from this ARCA company who are all purported to be testifying in the area of crash reconstruction. None of them are crash reconstructionists. They're all biomechanical or biomedical engineers. With regard to Dr. Van E, who I've had some experience with in the past, my typical dealings with him is there's some sort of report written by him. I have nothing. I just have a CV and about a paragraph of what's anticipated as far as his testimony. The other 3 individuals, my issue is there is a report that's within the federal materials in relation to what they did. However, it's a single
In relation
report,
to what?
in regard to whatever examinations or tests or whatever that.
Does it include all 3 experts, though?
Well, so that's the issue.
Yeah.
The issue is the report is signed by all 3 individuals. So I have no idea who did what, who would testify to what, who has an opinion as to what, or what that would be. So I'm just looking for some additional information or any clarification as to what each of those respective people would be testifying to beyond just all 3 signed a report.
Okay, who's arguing this for the defense?
With the court's permission, I'd like to handle the issue regarding civilian witnesses and have Mr. Jackson address the experts.
All right.
So my argument's very brief, Your Honor. We're well aware of our obligations under Rule 14, and any statements that we have regarding civilian witnesses that fall under that rubric, we will turn over, and we have.
But why haven't you?
No, we've turned over what we have. So in our view, we've complied with discovery with regard to the civilian witnesses that Mr. Lally speaks about.
All right. Do you have addresses for those witnesses, Mr. Lally?
We did it. Yeah.
All right. So they need addresses, right? If there's nothing there, they need the addresses so the police can go out and interview them.
We will get them addresses by the end of the day today.
Okay. All right. So my concern was that when, Mr. Lally, when did you file your certificate of compliance?
That would have been, I believe the Wednesday, not last Wednesday, the Wednesday before that.
And I had previously told counsel I would expect within 2 days of that, because obviously you've been preparing this case for a long time.
Of course, yes.
But so to have Mr. Lally stand here today and say that he doesn't have all this information that you know he's entitled to, I mean, dates of birth and addresses of witnesses are pretty standard, Ms. Giannetti, especially if you have, not provided anything that they're going to say. So that should have happened a week ago.
Your Honor,
If I may defer to my co-counsel.
Well, okay. And we do have to talk about how we're going to do this at trial. Okay.
Yes.
Your Honor, I provided reciprocal discovery to Mr. Lally within 24 hours of receiving
Okay.
the certificate of compliance.
Anything about these witnesses that Ms. Giannetti says they have everything on?
Yes, he's received statements from all the witnesses that we have statements for, which included their dates of birth, addresses.
How
all that
many
information.
is that, Ms. Little? How many witnesses?
I don't know off the top of my head, but every single report that we have for these witnesses that Mr. Lally has received in his witness list, he has reports for.
Okay.
And a number of our witnesses obviously are witnesses that the Commonwealth has interviewed.
Right. I think I crossed out much of your list when I read the names of the witnesses, right?
Exactly.
Because they were duplicates.
So we have complied with at least those obligations. And if there's any addresses that we haven't produced, I will make sure that gets done today, but he
Thank
should
you.
have the vast majority of everything.
All right. Anything specific, Mr. Lally, on the civilian witnesses?
Well, just in looking at the defense witness list, there are 77 witnesses that are listed. 35 of them are on the Commonwealth's witness list, and I have statements from 4 witnesses, not including experts, so that would probably make it to 9, or if you include the investigator, 10 or 11. So there's still a substantial amount of witnesses that I don't have addresses, date of births, or any statements from, or even what their anticipated testimony would be.
Your Honor, there's also probably an additional 10 to 12 witnesses that he has reports for from the federal materials, which include addresses, statements, that type of information.
All right. It's my view that that's still the defendant's obligation to provide. All right. Or at least acknowledge where they are. All right. Let me hear the expert response, Mr. Jackson.
Your Honor, with regard to Dr. Vanny, Chris Vanny, first of all, he is technically a rebuttal witness. There's a trooper named Trooper Paul that's going to be called in the Commonwealth's case in chief, and he's going to testify to some key cycle information. Key cycles are trigger events or cycling events with regard to the SUV. Chris Vanny is expected to testify in rebuttal to Trooper Paul's testimony that his Trooper Paul's analysis of the key cycles is flawed in terms of timing. And the number of key cycles that he relates back to an event that takes the SUV back to 34 Fairview. So Chris Vanny has done a similar analysis, or at least overviewed or looked over Trooper Paul's analysis, and has determined that Trooper Paul's analysis is incorrect. So
All
we
right.
expect, we included his name, although he's a rebuttal witness, we included his name just to be in an abundance of caution.
All
But
right.
he's not produced a report.
Do you have to at least tell the Commonwealth what he bases his opinion on, what he has viewed, what he bases his opinion on?
The exact same information, the raw data that Trooper Paul based his opinion on.
All right. So is this the first you're hearing this, Mr. Lally?
There's kind of a vague description to that effect, but again, what I'm hearing is similar to that in the sense of he disagrees with the Commonwealth's expert, but I don't have any foundation for that, or what specifically he disagrees about, or what his points of contention would be with Trooper Paul's report, as far as no report, no basis of opinion, no anything of that nature. That's my concern.
Okay. And you've requested a voir dire
Yes, Your Honor.
of the experts? All right. We don't want to bring this witness out here early for a voir dire. So I suggest you get the information that was requested.
I'll be happy to.
If we have to bring him out, we have to bring him out.
No, I'm not looking to bring him out, and I don't think that he needs to be voir dired. He's going to look at the exact same, and I'll call Mr. Lally and explain to him what I think in a little bit more granular detail is going to be the sum and substance of his testimony. But Mr. Lally he certainly can conceive, as Trooper Paul walks through his analysis, Chris Vanny is going to walk through the exact same analysis. It's the same data set. They're both working with apples and apples. He just has a different conclusion that the key cycles are not in keeping with what Trooper Paul analyzed, because he left some key cycles out. Pretty simple stuff. But I'm happy to contact Mr. Lally offline and let him know exactly what it is that
All
Chris
right.
Vanny has a
All
problem
right.
with.
So you do that. And if it's not resolved by Monday, we will pick a date within the next week to have voir dires of whatever experts that insufficient discovery has been provided to the Commonwealth on. So let's try and work everything out. The rules are very clear, and you need to provide this information.
And I thought we had, but I'm happy to have that additional conversation. And I'll do the same thing with regard to the ARCA witnesses as well.
So is there anything specifically, Mr. Lally, that you're looking for today in response to the biomechanical engineers?
Just specifically what their opinions are and what they're based on.
And who did what?
Who did what?
Should be fairly easy to provide, Mr. Jackson.
It has been in about a 9 or 10 page report that's detailed, single spaced.
But does it say who did what? I read the report as part of the federal materials. I couldn't figure out who did what. So,
Okay, I'm happy to talk to Mr. Lally about that. I believe the answer is going to be, in sum and substance, all of them work together as a team to come to the opinions and conclusions that are recited in the report. But I'll be happy to have an additional conversation with Mr. Lally about that. I don't know that I know every single thing. As a matter of fact, I don't know every single thing that everybody did, who screwed what bolt into what nut, et cetera. But I think by and large, Mr. Lally and I can come to an agreement about what the contours of each of their testimony would be.
okay.
And by the way, they are accident reconstructionists. So there's a
Do you have their CVs?
I do, and so does Mr. Lally.
I do.
Anything on the CV about being accident reconstructionist?
There is listings of accident reconstructionists, but I think that's part of the Commonwealth's request for a voir dire is the qualifications. I don't think meet that standard for them to be able to testify in that area.
All right, so two things. When the two of you are working on this between now and Monday, if the Commonwealth is not satisfied in requesting a voir dire, I need to hear from the two of you whether we need to do that before the evidence really gets started, or if it can be done before the witness testifies.
Okay.
All right.
Understood, Your Honor.
All right, so Commonwealth's motion for voir dire of any witness to be asked for opinion or character of defendant or any witness. I had that this was allowed by agreement, 314, DS number 24.
That's agreed.
And 304, Commonwealth's bolded number 14, Commonwealth's motion for order regarding opening statements and notice of any visual aids defense intends to display to jury during opening statement. So I need to know what parties intend to put up for exhibits or for chalks, whatever you intend to put up in opening. And I know you're doing the opening, Ms. Giannetti, so I need to know what you intend to display.
Nothing.
Okay, that makes it easier. So while we're talking just briefly of openings, you had told me, Ms. Giannetti, that you thought you could get everything in 35 minutes. I will give you both 45 minutes.
Oh, that's perfect. Yes, I'll be less than 45.
I'll hold you to that.
I know you will.
All right, so Mr. Lally, 45 minutes for the Commonwealth?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. And Commonwealth, do you intend to put anything up during openings?
During openings, no, Your Honor.
All right. Okay. Commonwealth's motion eliminate for notice and voir dire of Bowden. I thought that was, we decided that there would be a voir dire regarding before the Bowden testimony comes in.
I don't recall that, Your Honor.
All right. Well, Commonwealth's entitled to a voir dire. There'll be a voir dire.
My understanding of the court's ruling, as it applies to opening statements, is that I cannot point the finger at a third-party culprit, but I can introduce the idea of an inadequate investigation and discuss Bowden evidence.
As long as you know what's coming into evidence.
That's perfectly fair.
Remember, I use that term, competent evidence.
Of course.
That's what it has to be.
Of course.
All right. I'm sorry, Jim. 321, the Commonwealth's bolded 31, in case my number's not right.
Thank you.
319. So this is, we talked a little bit about this. It's Commonwealth's motion for advance notice if defendant intends to cross-examine any witness about alleged bias and request for pretrial ruling on whether the proposed evidence demonstrates a plausible showing of alleged bias. So as you well know, Mr. Lally, bias is definitely an area that is ripe for cross-examination and extensive cross-examination. I needed to know exactly what your concerns are.
And, Your Honor, I think what I would suggest might make the most sense with this is to sort of take it as it comes.
Okay.
I think it's a little difficult to put counsel in a position to, cite specific things that they wish and
We have a couple of motions where we do need to do that.
right.
But for generally with this, and because this was broad, that's why I did want to, when we had a brief hearing on this, I said that I did need to hear from you regarding specific statements. So what we're going to endorse this, Mr. Clerk, is that Commonwealth will object on a question by question basis. Does that work, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor.
Does that work for the defense, Mr. Yannetti?
For sure.
Okay.
Thank
Commonwealth will object to specific questions.
you.
And Mr. Lally, if you know in advance, depending on how the testimony comes in, if a particular witness gets up and you know before any examination what your concerns are, we'll visit it before the testimony.
Understood.
Okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
A similar motion to the defense expert issue. Mr. Clerk, I believe it's 315. It's bolded number 25 from the Commonwealth. Commonwealth's motion eliminate to prohibit defense experts from testifying regarding scientific studies or anecdotal experienced and request for voir dire. Mr. Jackson, do any of your witnesses intend to give anecdotal experiences?
I said this in the argument. I don't really know what that means, but no, in terms just the common sense knowledge of common sense definition of what that is. To my knowledge, they're not going to be talking about any.
Okay, I think it's pretty clear what it is. But if you think they're not going to do it, if it seems that they are, then we need to know. And how about the scientific studies?
The scientific studies would not be referred to in any of their testimony that I'm going to elicit at all.
Okay.
They did some scientific studying of the material.
No,
obviously.
do you mean like learned treatises and things like that, Mr. Lally?
Exactly, Your Honor.
Yes.
They're not going to be citing to learned treatises that I'm going to elicit.
Okay. All right. That's it in my category of discovery. There's some overlap in the motions that I think the following motions may take a little bit more time, and it's sort of the somewhat complex ones. So 311, Commonwealth's bold number 21. Commonwealth's motion eliminate to admit the victim's out-of-court statements relating to his state of mind. There's sort of some overlap, Mr. Lally, that we'll get into with other statements. But so this is the Commonwealth versus Qualls, Commonwealth versus Binns, that whole line of cases. Why don't I hear you? Is there any objection to this?
We may have a moment, Judge.
The Commonwealth, we were here last, the Commonwealth was told that they need to provide with the statements or the areas they intend to introduce. They do so in this motion. They do more extensively in another motion that's sort of dovetails. And the other motion concerns the Aruba incident, the arguments between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe, and also this Binns/Qualls type testimony.
Right, so I think our position, Your Honor, was that we need to know the specifics of what they intend to introduce. My expectation is that some of that will be admissible and some of it we won't have an objection to, but it's difficult to give either a blanket objection or a blanket assent without knowing the specifics.
Okay, but you did sort of make a blanket objection to the Aruba incident, if we
But
call it that.
We had to without knowing the specifics.
So on the second page of this motion, the Commonwealth intends to introduce statements the victim made to his family members and friends close in time to the murder about his relationship with the defendant and his decision to terminate the relationship. The Commonwealth also intends to introduce the victim's statements through text messages authored by the victim and contained within the victim's cell phone that express his decision communicated directly to the defendant to terminate their relationship. That goes squarely with Qualls and Binns.
Right, with regard to the text messages, I don't believe we have a basis to object.
All right, so I'm also going to allow statement. Mr. Lally, tell us what the statements specifically, as best you can. Who would be testifying? What family members? Does this involve the two children?
Yes, Your Honor. So there are statements that are made by the victim to the defendant in front of each of the two children with his intention to.
What are they roughly?
essentially that the relationship isn't working anymore and that he would like to break up with her, asked her to leave the house. She refuses, and this is in front of both the niece and the nephew.
All right. Ms. Giannetti, I'll hear you on that.
Our expectation is any statements that were made, allegedly made by Mr. O'Keefe to my client in front of other witnesses, we don't have a basis to object to that.
Okay, so that's coming in, and you've had the benefit of the sane interviews for a long time.
Correct.
so-
We don't waive potential hearsay objections during trial, Your Honor, but I think generally that's our answer.
All right. So on 311, Mr. Clerk, I'm going to allow that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, so sort of the same. 310. All right, and the defendant's is 283. It's a similar motion. So, Mr. Lally, why don't I hear you on this? So this is the one when I said there are 3 areas here as I see it. If we call it the Aruba incident, the animosity between the defendant and the victim in weeks and days prior to the victim's death, and that the defendant admitted to numerous witnesses at different times that the last thing she recalls was getting into an argument with the victim. So that whole domestic violence line of cases with state of mind clearly is admissible. So why don't I start with you, Mr. Lally? Go ahead and argue your motion.
So, Your Honor, specifically, what the Commonwealth is seeking to introduce there is you have the incident in Aruba, which there are really 4 witnesses who have information to provide to the jury.
Do we need all 4?
Well, so from different perspectives is what I would say. So 2 of them are, the incident or altercation occurs in the lobby of the hotel where the defendant, the victim, and the children are staying along with a larger party of friends of the victim. Following that incident, both children indicate that there's approximately 20-minute screaming match or something to that effect.
Both children were present?
Yes, within the hotel room, and both indicate to that. Then you have the woman, Marietta Sullivan, who's involved in the incident in the lobby, and then you have her sister, who is the person who invited them on the trip in the first place.
There's some additional testimony from these witnesses too, other than just the statements?
Correct. So the additional testimony from the sister who invited them on the trip, she's not a recipient witness to the altercation. I wouldn't be asking her anything about that.
Okay.
What I would be asking her about is just her observation. So she had gone out the evening prior with the victim and the defendant to dinner, and sort of the disparity between sort of their demeanor on the night before versus post this incident. And there was some statements that Mr. O'Keefe made to her about sort of the nature of their relationship or the nature of his relationship with the defendant.
And those statements have been provided to the defendant?
Yes, Your Honor.
There was testimony in the grand jury regarding those statements?
There is, yes. There's state police reports as well as testimony from the witness and the grand jury.
Okay.
In addition to that, as far as statements relative to the nature of the relationship, there are some minimal statements that are made by the defendant to a couple of witnesses at the waterfall the night before. Again, those are also contained within troopers' reports and the grand jury testimony of those witnesses. There are also the text messages between the victim, Mr. O'Keefe, and the defendant, which specifically address the nature of their relationship. There are text messages from the defendant to Mr. Higgins, which again specifically address not only the Aruba incidents weeks later, as well as and being a continuing point of concern, at least from the defendant's perspective, as to the nature of their relationship. And then taking all of that sort of in conjunction with the text messages between the two that day and the voicemails messages that the defendant left on the victim's cell phone shortly after the murder occurs. And then there are further statements that the defendant makes to a number of different people, whether they be troopers, whether it be paramedics, whether they be Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts, or in the presence of them, as well as at least 3 paramedics, indicating that the last time that she saw the victim, Mr. O'Keefe, they had gotten into an argument essentially at the house at Fairview Road right before she had left. So those are sort of the totality of the sort of specific areas in the nature of the relationship that the Commonwealth will be seeking to explore through the testimony of a number of different witnesses.
Okay, who's arguing this for the defense?
I will, Judge. As I'm listening, there seems to be quite a few different categories of information that the Commonwealth is seeking to introduce, and through different means. So, you know, it's difficult to, again, just give one blanket objection or one blanket assent to this. You know, generally speaking, witnesses who would testify about statements of Mr. O'Keefe's state of mind, that probably comes in.
We talked a little bit about that. That's the quals and the
Correct.
bins line of cases. So
Correct.
I did rule that those are coming in.
We recognize that,
Okay.
yes.
You said probably.
Well, yes. Well,
Right.
Mr. Lally raised it again, so.
And you don't have to assent. You can object to anything you want to object to, and I make the call. I mean, so you don't need to point out, you know, you don't need to apologize for objecting. Just go ahead and tell me the defendant's position.
Right, I understand, Judge. You know, I think the position here is that we recognize that much of this will come in, but we don't waive the ability to object to a specific question in terms of what it's, you know, what it asks for, how it's phrased, what could potentially come in if the question's too vague. So that's my hesitation on not.
So no, so and okay, so that's well taken. So even if you assent to it, doesn't mean that if a question crosses the line, you're prohibited from objecting to it. I've never done that before.
That's my point.
Yeah, so you haven't tried before me before. I would not do that. So I find that, let's say for the Aruba statement, all of these go to state of mind and motive. I will give a limiting instruction. I will make the findings that I need to find pursuant to Kamala versus Samir. It's a footnote in that case. It's footnote 8, I believe. I will make those findings at the time. There's certainly been a sufficient showing from the Commonwealth. So I will give a limiting instruction. I will welcome propose limiting instructions if you want to file them. I know you're all busy. If you don't want to, that's fine. I can handle that. Regarding the animosity, again, it's close in time. It goes to the nature of the relationship. I will give a limiting instruction. I'm confident that the limiting instructions will be followed by the jurors, that they're understandable. I will make observations at the time, and if they appear to be understanding and nodding, which you often see on limiting instructions, I will make those findings as well. But I'm satisfied that the jurors will be able to understand a limiting instruction and use the testimony only for the intended purpose. And the animosity goes to the nature of the relationship, goes to the domestic violence line of cases. And the argument being the last thing that the defendant says she recalled, and the children's testimony regarding ending the relationship, again, that goes to state of mind, and it goes to the quals and bins line of cases. And I will give a limiting instruction. I'm confident the jurors will understand. So that's my ruling on that, which actually, so it would be a denial, Jim, of defendant's motion 283.
Just for the record, it's 282.
82. And that's denied. I mean, it will not go to propensity, and we can make sure of that. And the Commonwealth's motion is 310, Jim, the bold 20, and that was sort of hand in hand with the other one. All right. So moving on to, I think we just briefly talked about, so it's paper number 306, Commonwealth's motion eliminate to admit expert celebrate demonstration. I think we briefly talked about it, and I wanted to know, so are the defendants objecting to the, so your witness's name again, I read it every day for the last week.
That's okay. It's Mr. Ian Whiffen.
Yes. So about him doing a demonstration, is there an objection to that from the defense?
Your Honor, thank you. Since the last time we were in court, we've had an opportunity to look at that.
Yeah, I'd like to look at it, but okay, so you looked at it?
We did. It's not that long. It's maybe, I don't know, I want to say 22, 25 minutes, something like that. We'll submit on the papers and stand on the objection that we previously made, that it doesn't comport with the exactitude that we think is necessary for a demonstration, but I don't think it bears, it's not an enormous deal for us. We do stand on the objection, but I'll submit on the papers.
All right, so I'm going to allow it, but Mr. Lally, I'd also like to see it.
Of course.
Okay, so if you could get me a copy, Ms. Gilman, can you get me a copy of that before the end of today?
I think so. Yes.
All right.
I'm
Thank
speaking
you.
for.
All right. All right. So Jim, 306 is allowed.
Thank you.
All right. So the two that may take, there's three actually, but the two that we'll cover here before we get to sort of logistics and sequestration. Commonwealth's motion to prohibit reference to any pending internal affairs investigations or unfounded allegations. And I did just, I don't know why, I know you filed it previously, Ms. Little, but I just today had the opportunity to read your supplemental memo in opposition. Okay, so, all right, so this is twofold. So I'll hear the Commonwealth regarding Trooper Proctor and also regarding Sergeant Lang.
Sure. Your Honor, with regard to, I think the recent sort of progeny of cases between McFarland and Graham are sort of entirely instructive. I would submit as far as this particular area is concerned. So when it comes to Sergeant Lang, you're talking about a civil case with no judgment. There was no finding. There was no trial. So I think Graham and McFarland are pretty clear that is not conduct that can be used in a criminal case to impeach a witness.
Why can't it be used regarding, I think what separates this in some respects from those cases, even though there's no finding, is just like the pure bias part of it, right? If there's bias in favor of the Alberts, which is what the defendants say their defense is among the possible third-party culprits, why can't they cross-examine on that?
Well, the information that I've seen, I don't think specifically lends to a defense of the Alberts. I think if it lends to anything, it lends to Sergeant Lang being involved in some sort of altercation himself, and whatever extent there's any veracity to whatever is alleged by the other parties to have occurred. Firstly. Secondly, I don't even believe, again, I think we're going to, one Albert equals the entire Albert family kind of thing. And I don't think that any of the Alberts that they point to, or at least that Mr. Yannetti got up and spoke about being potential third-party culprit targets, were even present, involved, or had anything to do with this prior incident. So whether or not Sergeant Lake knows or was 20 some odd years ago friendly with one member of the Albert family or even two, if they're not any people that were at the residence on Fairview Road that night that were present there in the morning when he arrived pursuant to a call from a sergeant on scene to investigate or anything of that like, I don't see how it's relevant to that form of questioning or impeachment, particularly where it's an unsustained finding and there's nothing, concrete as to what transpired.
Okay, I guess my question was simply because something might not fit squarely in McFarland and Graham. If it's admissible for other purposes, then it can come in.
Right.
So who's arguing this part? We'll take these in two parts. So we'll do the Trooper Proctor part afterwards. But Ms. Little, I did say I'd give you the opportunity to argue those two cases, but if you want to, you can. But I'm more focused on the bias or motive
I'll
part.
just briefly address Graham and McFarland because
Sure.
I do think it's very important that we make clear that both of those cases are completely an opposite to the issue that's before this court, which is admissibility at trial. McFarland and Graham both deal with whether the Commonwealth has an obligation to turn over certain discovery. That's not where we are right now, right? We filed the appropriate motion to receive discovery. We obtained information about an IA investigation. We obviously—
But just let's focus on Lank first.
Sure.
Okay,
So—
I agree with you. They're discovery cases. They're not admissibility cases.
Okay, so that issue aside, Lank has he's one of the first responders, obviously, who went to 34 Fairview on the morning of January 29th. He's the first person to enter the Albert residence that morning. And he has a long-standing relationship with the Albert family, which is brought in by this sort of prior lawsuit that we brought to the court's
The
attention.
Albert family appears to be huge, right?
Well,
or very extended family.
Well, I'm getting there. So
Okay.
the altercation that Lank was involved in was after he deputized himself to involve himself in a fight that Chris Albert had been in. Chris Albert is one of the Commonwealth's witnesses in this case. He is Brian Albert's brother. He was with them all that night on the 28th. His son, Colin Albert, as you know, is a third-party culprit. So this is not some tangential family member. This is—
Who would you intend to get, if I allow this, and we really need to see how things develop beforehand. So, Mr. Yannetti, I can tell you right now, I'm not going to allow you to open on this because I need to see how the evidence comes in.
It's not part of my opening.
Okay. Who would you intend? I see you have the Lopolito brothers on the witness list. I think that goes far further than I would allow. But who do you intend to get the testimony in through and how?
Through Sergeant Lank himself. I think we need to be afforded the ability to cross-examine him. Once that's done, we may need
if he denies it, and we'll figure that out.
But I think the first step is allowing us to inquire as to his relationships and the connection that he has to the family and this incident that occurred.
So you can certainly inquire as to his relationship with the family. It's the incident. I need to see again, just reading of everything that I've read, Sergeant Lank doesn't have it. His testimony isn't as lengthy as other witnesses, right?
I don't think that that's necessarily true, Your Honor, as far as our cross-examination.
Okay, but for his direct is not as lengthy as other witnesses.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. So, all right. So go ahead. So through him, through Chris Albert?
Through him, potentially through Chris Albert as well, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So Mr. Yannetti's not going to open on this, and he said he wasn't planning on it anyway. So
No, Your Honor.
let's see how the evidence develops. It may be that we have a voir dire of Sergeant Lank and Chris Albert beforehand. Okay. So I'm not going to take any action on this right now.
Okay.
But I'm not denying it as the Commonwealth's requesting me to do.
Thank you, Your
So
Honor.
we'll see where we go with this. Okay. All right. So now let's deal with the Trooper Proctor part.
So, Trooper Proctor, Your Honor, in regard to NEI investigation, which we have not received any material in regard to other than its existence. And I want to be clear on that because I think counsel might be a little confused by some material that we provided to them. So there were some interviews in regard to any sort of areas of potential bias. with regard to Trooper Proctor and certain members of the Albert family. That was something that we did. So we had asked a couple of captains from the state police who are completely divorced from the investigation and completely divorced from our office, conducting interviews with regard to Trooper Proctor and a few of the other civilian witnesses.
Okay.
in
How
relation to
recently? I mean, it's all recent. When was that?
that was, I think, all discovery related to that was provided to counsel the week prior to trial.
Okay.
But they were done sort of in the weeks leading up to that.
Is that part complete?
Yes.
Okay.
So as far as the IA investigation goes, just the mere fact that there is an IA investigation, the Commonwealth would submit is not an appropriate area for cross-examination, and particularly when it's an open investigation, there are no findings and falls squarely within McFarland and Graham. And I understand what the court's comments before about them being primarily discovery cases, and I would agree with that. But they also go to discovery cases as far as what. So if something can't be ordered to be provided in the course of discovery, then it's I would submit inferentially inadmissible. So what I'm suggesting with this motion, what I'm arguing in this motion, is that whereas there is no findings of liability, there's no findings of any wrongdoing or anything of that ilk, just sort of putting out there that there's an open IA investigation without anything more, because nothing else exists at this point.
Why wouldn't it go to his bias and his motive? If he's under investigation, why wouldn't he have the motive to testify favorably, or why doesn't it go to that? Maybe not the fact that it's IAD, but just there's an ongoing investigation that he's aware of, that he's involved. And I don't know if his job depends on it. I don't know that. Maybe there's not enough to know. But why isn't that motive and bias on his part? Do you think that's prohibited by Graham and McFarland?
I do, and just for that specific, because essentially what it allows a defendant to do is to pursue a line of questioning that they have no idea what that line of questioning is or what it will eventually be, and it could eventually turn into nothing, and to allow that sort of imprimatur of the court to allow that sort of questioning into an area that is completely unsettled and completely there's no evidence to substantiate other than the fact that it exists, without any sort of finding, without any sort of evidence to support it. I mean, we don't have any evidence as far as what that is or that it even pertains to this case. So with regard to all of that, I understand, that outside of McFarland and outside of Graham, that there are other avenues, as the court was alluding to, as far as motive, as far as bias, as far as things of that nature. But when it's just so scant as far as what that is versus sort of the connotation behind those questions, I just think it's unfair to the Commonwealth. It's unfair to the witness to be put in that position when there's really no information available.
All right. What do you say, Ms. Little?
Your Honor, I think that ADA Lally's representation that we don't know what this investigation is about is disingenuous, to say the least.
Why so? Why? Is there
Reason
something in
is-
the, hold on, is it something in the information that you've received
Yes, Your Honor.
from
and-
Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So can I get a copy of that?
Yes, Ron.
Okay.
So, as the court knows, first of all, Graham and McFarland deal with the Commonwealth's mandatory discovery obligations, right? Those courts also very specifically state that there's mechanisms outside of those mandatory discovery obligations for defendants to obtain information that's relevant and admissible at trial. That's why we filed a Rule 17 motion requesting these disciplinary records, and that's why that was granted.
It was granted because the Commonwealth did not object.
So regardless, we've obtained those records, and the cases that Mr. Lally continues to cite do not stand for the proposition that that's the only mechanism by which information can be produced at trial. Those are discovery cases. They are not admissibility cases. Pursuant to that request, we have received information discussing the IA investigation at which Trooper Proctor is being questioned specifically about this case. This is not an instance where we're questioning whether or not there's a basis for an IA investigation. It's clear this investigation was predicated on the materials that were produced to the Commonwealth by the federal authorities in this case.
And initiated by the Commonwealth. The IID investigation was initiated by the DA's office, correct?
Well, as far, and just to correct what I certainly didn't mean to impute that this case had absolutely no bearing or there was no
I
basis for
didn't
that.
think you did.
But what I was saying with that is we don't know what the full extent of that is. But as far as what counsel is, what the court's question as far as the IAD, it was something that our office had spoken to. We felt we had a duty to disclose to State Police Legal Counsel, and then they refer it to the IA, and that's how that investigation began. As it pertains to what counsel is talking about, that has nothing to do with IA. So the materials that the Commonwealth has provided, that was completely separate investigation initiated by the District Attorney's Office. in
Okay.
relation to that.
Okay.
The IA investigation came on the heels of this information being produced to the Commonwealth. This is not a situation in which we're really questioning what the basis of that investigation is. The Commonwealth has in its possession numerous materials that suggest there has been significant misconduct on the part of Trooper Proctor. That will come out at trial.
How?
However,
How?
through cross-examination,
What if they don't call Trooper Proctor?
we will call Trooper Proctor.
To impeach him?
Yes.
All right, so be prepared to argue that. I don't know. He's on the witness list. He's the first person on the witness list. They're probably calling him. I'm just
He's the lead detective
hypothetically
in this
throwing it out
case.
there.
He's conducted every single step of this investigation.
With others, right?
Excuse me?
With others?
Sometimes, but he is the primary investigator in this case. And I think it's very, very important for the court, and I think you noted correctly, that bias and motive are absolutely critical to Ms. Reed's right to defend herself at trial. We have to be able to explore those issues. And in order for Trooper Proctor to testify, he has a motivation to testify in a certain way to avoid liability in this pending IA investigation. So I think it's unfair to tie our hands behind our back and not be able to question him about this, because it directly drives his bias and motive in this case and gives him reason to testify in a certain way, knowing that he could face career consequences if he doesn't.
Do you intend to try and open on this, Ms. Giannetti? Because I need more information.
I'm not going to mention the IA investigation in my opening statement.
All right, so Ms. Tilali, if you can get me that information that you mentioned that you had sent to council, I'll take a look at that. It may well be the fact that there's an investigation without what the nature of the investigation is, that there's an important investigation, and if you can show me in advance that his job may depend on it, things of that nature, there may be cleaner ways to allow this testimony in. So, all right, so we need a little time. I need to read those materials.
Sure. And for the court's edification, I don't anticipate, he's sort of towards the middle, I would say.
Okay. All right, good. And the more fully the records developed, and the easier to rule on some of these motions. I just want to give you all some idea so you know how to prepare for the next 2 weeks. So, all right. So not in your openings on either one of these, Ms. Giannetti, but you agree to that. So this is still under advisement. It may be certainly with Lank or Sergeant Lank of voir dire of Sergeant Lank and of voir dire of Chris Albert. We'll see how the evidence develops, and I'll read more about the information that the Commonwealth was provided. So 318 also, it's 28 bolded from the Commonwealth. All right, so Commonwealth's motion eliminate to admit, this is, you know what, I don't have a number on this one, Jim. Commonwealth's motion eliminate to admit results of defendant's blood draw at Good Samaritan Hospital and resulting serum conversion and retrograde extrapolation.
Judge, that's paper 339.
All right, and the Commonwealth, I mean, the defendants is 289 It's the addressing the same issues. Yeah, I told the Commonwealth to put this in writing. So I guess it's defendant's motion. So I'll hear from the defense. Your motion 289.
Thank you, Your Honor. With regard to that, we've put most of our argument in the paper, so I don't want to rehash all of those. The issue is really the foundational issue, not the extrapolation. The extrapolation is sort of a garbage in, garbage out argument, like computers. We think that the underlying blood draw did not follow the proper protocols that it should have followed. Therefore, the veracity of that particular blood draw is at issue.
All right, can I just ask, the Commonwealth intends to have witnesses here to testify to that, right? How the
Yes.
blood was drawn,
Yes,
all of
the
that?
Commonwealth would have the doctor that ordered it, the blood draw, the nurse slash nurse practitioner. I summons both as far as who took the blood, and then the director of the lab at the Good Samaritan Medical Center. What I
Okay.
hope to...
So let me get back to Mr. Jackson, and then I'll hear you on that. I just wanted that. I'm not sure we had all that information when you filed the motion, but does that change anything, Mr. Jackson?
It doesn't, because the individuals that did the blood draw, it wasn't done in an accredited manner. I'm not arguing with the fact that the blood draw was taken, that somebody with a phlebotomist actually took the blood, but it wasn't done with the protocols or the accreditation that's required under Massachusetts state law and the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab. Their protocols were, I apologize, their protocols were breached internally. And given that breach, we believe that any extrapolation based or founded upon those faulty blood draws, those unaccredited blood draws, are suspect as well. So the sum and substance is that you can't trust the extrapolation if it wasn't an accredited and a foundationally solid blood draw to begin with.
So if all the witnesses are here for cross-examination, why doesn't that go to the weight of the evidence instead of the admissibility?
Because we think that the admissibility is based on the protocols that the Massachusetts State Police have put in place. If they didn't have accreditation protocols, it wouldn't mean anything. It probably would go to the weight, not the admissibility. I think the admissibility is predicated on their own rules. They don't get, in our view, they don't get to break their own rules and then say, oh, well, let's just let it go to the weight, not the admissibility. We believe that it's important enough that it shouldn't ever come in front of the jury in the first place, notwithstanding the fact that we could obviously cross-examine them on the lack of accreditation. We think that it rises to the next level of not being trustworthy, and therefore it's overly prejudicial.
Okay. Mr. Lally, doesn't this happen in hospitals across Massachusetts on a regular basis?
It does, and just to be clear, nobody's breaking anybody's own rules. This wasn't blood work that was taken by anybody at the lab or tested at the lab. It was taken at the hospital, tested at the hospital, and what the technician or the forensic scientist from the Office of Alcohol Testing is doing is essentially mathematical calculations based on that result. So I would submit it goes exactly to the weight of the evidence. It's certainly fertile ground for cross-examination or argument by counsel. But as far as it being admissible, it's certainly admissible. This is what happens in every case. Whether or not Good Samaritan Medical Center's lab is ANAB accredited or anything of that nature is irrelevant. It has nothing to do with the state police strictures because they're not the ones who actually conducted the testing of what was in the blood.
All right, do you want to respond?
I just wanted to refresh the court's recollection. I mentioned this at the last hearing, but just one element of the problem is in the result. The extrapolated result was 124% swing. In other words, we extrapolated based on the blood draw.
Yeah, I know what it means.
And that's just massive. I've never seen a swing that big. It's, you pull somebody over. Well, they have
Sounds like a great area for cross-examination.
I think it will be.
Okay.
But if it's not admissible in the first place because it's inherently untrustworthy, then you could save me my breath.
Yeah. I don't see how this doesn't come in.
I'll submit, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I just think that it's so unreliable that it shouldn't be put before the jury. And we run the risk of prejudicing the jury in a way that we can't sort of unring that bell. Yes, we can cross-examine, but I don't think that the underlying blood draw is foundationally solid enough.
Mr. Lally, were you planning on using this in your opening?
I don't have to.
All right, so why don't we wait and if need be, we'll have I mean, the experts, let's wait until it gets closer to these experts or the folks from the hospital testifying. If we need to have a short voir dire, you need to remind me to do that, Mr. Jackson, okay?
Thank you for that, Your Honor. Appreciate it.
All right. Okay, so the last area I have is sort of logistics and sequestration. So let me, so the Commonwealth filed a motion initially. You know what, we'll hold off on the logistics regarding the audiovisual assistant. So there was a motion in limine for sequestration that I allowed regarding the family. So the victim's brother, Paul O'Keefe, the sister-in-law, Erin O'Keefe, the niece and nephew can attend the trial after their testimony. So that motion 293 is allowed. I understand that perhaps, well, I was going to also allow Mr. O'Keefe's father, who appears for some reason on the defendant's witness list. He is exempt also by me from the sequestration order. All right, so that's John O'Keefe Sr. So I just added that in. So Mr. Clerk, 293 is allowed with the addition of Mr. O'Keefe
Thank you.
Sr. So the Commonwealth has filed a two-part motion, a motion for offer of proof regarding calling the elected sitting district attorney of Norfolk County and sequestration order if he is permitted to be called. This also includes Stephen Nelson, who is the victim witness person. So why don't I hear you, Mr. Lally or Ms. McLaughlin? I'll hear you on this motion.
Yes, Your Honor. So the reason for this motion is, as the court noted, they appear on the defendant's witness list. Neither of them, I believe, has received a summons in regard to it. So there's no motion to quash because there's no summons to quash. But with respect to each, as the case law is abundantly clear, in order for these witnesses from a prosecution team to be subject to being called as witnesses by the defense, the Commonwealth is just seeking some sort of proffer whatsoever as to what areas they can testify and to, and only they can testify to. So if it's information that the defendant can elicit either through direct testimony or cross-examination from, and I would submit whatever, I would believe that whatever testimony they seek from either of these witnesses, they could get ample testimony from a multitude of other witnesses. Specifically, the only point that was raised as sidebar during impanelment was with reference to the district attorney testifying as to whatever issues, purported issues of conflict or removal of Canton Police Department from the investigation. Certainly those are questions I think far more appropriate for members of both the Canton Police Department, members of the State Police CPAC Detective Unit. The head of that unit, Lieutenant Tully, is one of the Commonwealth's witnesses who will be testifying, and I think he's in a far better position to testify to that than Mr. Morrissey. But regardless of that, what the case law is very clear about is that, number one, the victim witness advocate is a part of the prosecution team, and in these sort of areas stands in sort of the same stead as a prosecutor himself. Secondly, with respect to whatever areas of examination are expected or anticipated from these two witnesses, there has to be some sort of proffer of what that anticipated testimony would be that they can't get from some other witness. Certainly, Mr. Nelson has been the victim witness advocate working on this case.
So why don't you explain to me, I did look at the victim's Bill of Rights, but why don't you explain to me exactly what a victim witness advocate does, the nature of the relationship with the victim's family? I know there was a lot of discussion about this in grand jury minutes that I read about scheduling appointments, meeting with people, things of that nature.
So, I mean, what the To say assist, I think is doing it somewhat of a disservice as far as the prosecution. It's someone who works directly with the prosecutor on virtually every step of the case, as far as investigation, as far as pending motions, as far as trial.
Has Mr. Nelson been the advocate throughout the pendency of this case?
Yes, Your Honor. So for over 2 years, has been the point of contact with the family, has been with the family at each of the court dates, is assistant and very helpful as far as coordinating things with the family, coordinating meetings, scheduling meetings with witnesses in preparation of grand jury, in preparation of trial, has communicated thoroughly with regard to issues of scheduling and all of those types of things.
Does he take calls like late at night from witnesses? Does he have a personal relationship with witnesses? Governed by a professional relationship? Is he somebody that they are able to call? There's been a lot of allegations of harassment of witnesses.
Correct.
Are those folks able to call him when something like that happens?
That is the person that they would call.
Okay.
Yes. So I think the bulk of the communications and conversations with witnesses who are not members of Mr. O'Keefe's family over the course of the last couple of years have been in relation to that issue specifically, as far as harassment, threats, intimidation, things of that nature, that he's dealt with admirably in relation to those witnesses.
Okay. All right. Who's arguing this for the defense?
I will, Your Honor, and I think it makes sense to separate out DA Morrissey and victim witness advocate Steve Nelson in
Okay.
this
Let's
argument.
let's start with Mr. Nelson.
Sure. Your Honor, the defense acknowledges that there are often times where, let's say, a victim witness advocate sits in on an interview with a witness or an alleged victim, but there are other witnesses in the room to whom or who could testify about the content of that, and that doesn't necessarily make it proper to call a victim witness advocate during a trial. I acknowledge that. I also acknowledge that the victim witness advocate has a job to do, and it puts them as sort of an intermediary between the prosecutors and the police and alleged victims.
So when you were a prosecutor, you worked very closely with victim witness advocates.
I did.
Okay.
Yes, and it's my experience being on the other side that informs my knowledge of that. But this is a different case with regard to one specific issue. And that is that we learned as a result of the federal materials that victim witness advocate Steve Nelson had conversations with Brian Higgins and we believe Brian Albert, but Brian Higgins talked about him specifically. Mr. Higgins was asked, where is his cell phone? Why does he not have it? Are you aware of the preservation order that was issued by Judge Krupp in the Karen Reed case? And the answer came back that he was given permission to destroy or dispose of his cell phone from victim witness advocate Steve Nelson.
Did he say destroy? I'm trying to remember the testimony. I don't think he said destroy.
I used the disjunctive rather than the conjunctive because from memory, I can't remember the precise language, but it was conveyed to, I'm told that the precise language was to get rid of. Which would be consistent with what I had
told
said.
He could get rid of, not
Correct.
Told he must get rid of.
Correct. In other words, Steve Nelson is overruling a colleague of yours, your predecessor on this case, who issued a preservation order which was never lifted. And yet he stepped into the case, gave authorization that he did not have to give for the disposal of a phone, which is relevant.
Okay, is that the sole issue you want to?
Yes.
The sole issue?
Yes, that's with regard to Mr. Nelson. It's different with regard to Mr.
All right,
Morris.
what's the Commonwealth's response to that?
I don't believe any of that is accurate. So what counsel is referring to is there was a motion to preserve cell phones. The Commonwealth notified each of the witnesses that were subject to the motions and the orders, sent copies of the motions and the orders, as well as a letter explaining that. There were conversations in regard to that. There was then a subsequent Rule 17 motion filed specifically for the physical phones. There were conversations with those specific witnesses, just advising them that the Rule 17 motion had been filed. They had to, hold on to their phones, things of that nature, explaining what the process was. The hearing was conducted, the Rule 17 motion was denied, and then those witnesses were subsequently informed that the motion had been denied. I believe even from Mr. Higgins' testimony in the federal grand jury that counsel is referring to, he was specifically asked whether or not he had been ever advised by Mr. Nelson, myself, or anyone from our office that he could or should get rid of his phone, and he said no. So I don't know what further needs to be explored on that particular point, as the question was, all of these issues were explored in that particular area, and just because counsel, I think, may not like the answer or doesn't believe that the answer is truthful or whatever, that does not then permit bringing in this witness to testify to what they know is not true.
All right, so Ms. Giannetti?
We believe that that's a misstatement of what was testified to. I think it probably makes sense for this court to look at his very testimony so that you can make a decision on this, Your Honor.
So here's what I'm going to do. Let's wait and see. Let's wait and see how Mr. Higgins testifies. Okay, I am not going to order sequestration of Mr. Nelson, and let's see how the testimony is. And if you need to call him, you let me know, and we'll have another hearing on it.
Okay, we'll do it. And just to answer an anticipated question from the court, I do not open on this issue.
You cannot open on that issue, Ms. Giannetti. Do you still need the 45 minutes?
That takes away nothing from my open.
All right, so Jim, I'll start writing. I'll write something on this.
Your Honor, with regard to the sequestration, I think it would be appropriate for the court to order that Mr. Nelson and Mr. Higgins not discuss this issue from here forward.
Are you willing to have that happen, Mr. Lally?
That's fine, Your
Honor. Yeah, I'd order it, but he's willing to do it.
Thank you.
All right, so I just need a minute to write this up.
Sure.
All right, so regarding DA Morrissey.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. So, Your Honor, the integrity of the investigation that was done in this case is certainly a live and important issue that is part of the defense in this case. I think the court would agree that we're entitled to question the integrity of the investigation, to attack it where we can. And it goes without saying that as the district attorney in Norfolk County, Michael Morrissey is in charge of that investigation. Now, in the usual case, that doesn't necessarily make a district attorney a witness. That would be unusual. There probably have been very few requests to have a district attorney testify in that regard. However, this case is different for two reasons. One is the conflict of interest regarding the Canton Police Department, which Mr. Morrissey was involved in. The second is the manner in which he injected himself into this case personally and made representations that we should be allowed to challenge.
Do you want to play that video?
We haven't made that decision yet. It may be that we elect to play portions of the video. It may be that we just elect to question DA Morrissey.
I have to think of other ways, right? That's part of the analysis that I have to follow in the law. So that's why I'm asking.
Of course. And I think before we get to that issue, Your Honor, the conflict issue is what puts him on the stand first. And we learned from the federal materials that former Chief Kenneth Berkowitz notified DA Morrissey at a very, very early juncture at 8:30 a.m. A phone call from Chief Berkowitz to DA Morrissey notified him that Kevin Albert is on their force. He's the brother of the homeowner whose lawn contained the lifeless body of John O'Keefe, and that DA Morrissey was involved in that decision. He received the information from former Chief Berkowitz and concurred that the Canton police were conflicted out. And then the problem is that the Canton police they had their hands in this investigation, including that day after 8:30 a.m. and going forward. And there were, updates that were provided to Kevin Albert by a trooper under DA Morrissey's control, that, there were violations of that sort of conflict of interest taking Canton out of the case that DA Morrissey became aware of and that DA Morrissey did nothing about. And so in terms of, us being able to, attack, question the integrity of the investigation.
Why can't you do it through other witnesses?
We can, but the buck stops with District Attorney Michael Morrissey. He was the one that was involved at a very early juncture on this precise issue of the conflict, and he became aware that that conflict was violated time and time and time again, and he did nothing. And I believe that that's ripe for cross-examination. And, with regard to his statement to the press, this may even be more compelling, not because of the bias necessarily that he showed. That's not the strongest part. I think it is strong, but it's not the strongest part of his statement. His statement makes factual assertions, some of which we heard for the first time. In that videotape statement, he announced to everyone, including potential jurors, that Trooper Proctor never reported to the scene on January 29th. That's in direct conflict to police reports that we received from the troopers saying that they reported to the scene. And we would argue, trying to use semantics to get out of that, and now saying that for the first time in my career, I've heard that the crime scene is actually the police station that's across town. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't pass the straight face test. But those are his own words, and he made himself a witness by uttering those words. And he also talked about his view of what witnesses did or didn't do and whether they're suspects or not suspects. Again, he injected himself into this case. He made himself a witness, and there's really nobody else we can question about his knowledge that he had when he made those statements and why he made those statements, and also the fact that, he was involved in this conflict decision from the beginning. So that's our offer of proof.
Mr. Lally?
I mean, as far as his statements, his opinions are completely irrelevant. And I think what counsel is referring to as proper for cross-examination, they might be. But this would be a witness that they're calling themselves. So for direct examination of your own witness, I think it's improper, number one. Number two, there is ample other avenues to explore this through other witnesses, which counsel can certainly do. As related to whatever.
As the law tells me I have to consider.
Correct. And so, as it pertains to whatever extent the court allows as far as the Bowden defense is concerned, then I think it's fertile ground for cross-examination of other witnesses in respect to that. But as to whatever statements were made or not made by something that someone doesn't have recipient knowledge of, because I don't think anybody's saying that Mr. Morrissey was at 34 Fairview Road. So with all of those things in consideration, I don't think that it's even close to a valid proffer as to why the district attorney or Mr. Nelson need to testify on their own as to any of those things. The last thing I would just note is with respect to Mr. Nelson, the alleged mischaracterization that I made in regard to Mr. Higgins' testimony is actually contained on page 140 of his testimony.
140.
140.
Could you read it? Do you have it there? If you don't have it there.
It's more so I don't know that I'm
Okay.
ready to.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I could just add one thing that I should have mentioned, which is on this issue of whether there's another witness that could testify.
Yes, because you did say, yes, we can get it in through other witnesses.
Yes, except the one thing we can't get in through other witnesses, potentially, is the phone call from Chief Berkowitz to DA Morrissey, where, as I'm understanding it, there were only two people on that call, and the Commonwealth is seeking to take Chief Berkowitz off the witness stand as well.
Are you? I didn't see anything like that.
No, I'm not seeking to keep him off the witness stand. What I informed counsel is as to his current medical condition, and informed counsel that's why I didn't summons him. But I'm not seeking
I knew nothing about this.
prohibit him from testifying.
My understanding was that the prosecution didn't believe that he would be able to testify.
This is the first I'm hearing any of that. All right. So it is a stretch. It is an uphill battle for you, Mr. Yannetti. I will allow you to revisit the ADA Morrissey at the close of the Commonwealth's case. Right now, that your offer of proof is not enough. I'll give you the opportunity to do it again based on the testimony that comes in, and I am not excusing him, or he is not subject to the sequestration order.
Understood, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, Jim, I'll write something short on that. I've written the part about Mr. Nelson that I'll give you afterwards.
Great, thank you.
All right. So when we had our motion in limine hearing, I think we went much of the day that Friday. I don't remember if it was last Friday or the Friday before. I ended that with saying twice, is there anything else we need to discuss regarding housekeeping or logistics? And I was told no by both parties. And then I get a motion the following April 19th, the end of last week, about wanting to use not just having an a technology audio visual assistant at council table, but to use, it's much more extensive than what I expected. The Commonwealth filed their motion and it was allowed previously because it happens in every single case in these courtrooms, and the Commonwealth shares their equipment. Please tell me exactly what it is you want to do. And I'm mindful also of the fact that during impanelment, while we were actively on trial in this case, in a critical part of the case, your audiovisual person, who I had never seen, was sitting where you are, Mr. Yannetti, talking to your client. So it sounds like he's taking liberties in this courtroom, and I need to know exactly what you need him for and what it is you intend to do. Keeping in mind also that we're going to be now in a much smaller courtroom. So tell me, are there any agreements of counsel? Is there any, I know nothing about this, and I asked for information previously so I could have thought about it and, you know, seen a demonstration or heard something. What is it you're asking me to allow?
Thank you, Your Honor. It's very modest. We did mention that we were going to ask for this.
But you didn't do it in writing, and you didn't give me specifics.
Your Honor, we asked you, and you then said, put it in writing. Then we put it in writing. And we
But
did
the first
exactly-
time it was brought up was after I had asked about logistics. Go ahead, tell me exactly what it is you want to do.
Okay, so it's a very modest request. Under ordinary circumstances, we've utilized his services before. He would sit at council table and he would run sort of the AV to make it seamless and smooth for everybody, for the jurors, for the court reporter, for opposing counsel. He can put monitors at the request of the court, monitors on the bench, a monitor in front of the court reporter, a monitor in front of the Commonwealth, and a monitor here, all small, relatively inobtrusive monitors. He also can run the system of AV, in other words, putting up evidence. I'm looking at evidence binders that Mr. Lally and I are going to be visiting about through the day today and tomorrow. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photographs in here, multimedia, that's going to need to be played and shown throughout the course of the trial. Instead of walking back and forth and doing it sort of
No, and that's what we do every day in this courtroom.
right, and that's what he does every day in courtrooms as well. I mean, we're asking for is an accommodation exactly like the Commonwealth has. It's just easier for us if I'm up on a cross-examination or Mr. Yannetti is up on a cross-examination, and we say, okay, if let's say we've got internal bait stamps that show photograph number 231, he'll know what photograph number 231 is. He'll have an outline that tracks our cross-examination or a direct examination.
So it will be only things that are in evidence or will be coming into evidence. You're not going to do that with disputed.
Absolutely not. We would never do that. If there's anything that's disputed or even remotely controversial, my habit and practice is to ask to approach the bench. We all walk up. I say, this is what I'm proposing to show the jury, and the court rules on it. No, all it is just a sort of a facile accommodation of seamlessly showing multimedia or playing an audio or playing a video for the jurors.
All right, what's the Commonwealth's position on this?
Your Honor, given that representation, I mean, that's precisely what we do in every case in which we have either Ms. Gilman or Ms. Crawford or whoever assisting with the trial. If that's what it's limited to, I don't know. About the additional monitors or things of that nature, whether or not, especially if we're going to be in courtroom 25, whether that's really necessary. But certainly whatever logistically we have as far as equipment or screens or whatever is obviously fully, we would fully make accessible to defense counsel as well, as we do in every case.
All right, so in Suffolk County, there are monitors. The audiovisual equipment is fantastic. There are the jury seats. They're for everybody to see. There's even a way if something is an objected to motion, it can just be seen on the lawyer's screen and the judges. So the bottom line is, if we had known about this 2 months ago, we would have been able to really put the time into seeing exactly how this works. Ms. Tinetti, I'd like to finish first, and I'll give you the opportunity to speak to Mr. Jackson, to really see how this works, see how we set it up. I can't devote that time to it right now. No monitors, I don't want a monitor. I'm not allowing, or Madam Court Reporter is fine. We're in that very small courtroom now at your request. So we don't need monitors on the tables. I don't have the time to physically go see how this all looks. Ms. Gilman's here. Perhaps she can speak with your audio-visual person, and then you can all make a presentation to me. But again, this, months ago would have been much better.
Well, I understand the court's concern. This is extremely modest, and it's not going to take a whole lot of presentation. If the court doesn't want to monitor, the court says, I don't want to monitor.
I don't know if I want monitors on those tables so close to the jury.
That's fine. Then the court can say, I don't want monitors that close to the jury. Then what I would do is just use paper copies. When I'm up on direct or cross-examination, I don't want to I can't prepare with the Commonwealth's.
No, I understand that. I don't think he'll fit a counsel table.
I can't speak to that. I think he would. I think we could accommodate him. Or if he doesn't fit right at counsel table, we've also set up He was on a relatively large case that we had in a small courtroom back in California, and he's set up just behind counsel table, and he's got his own laptop, and nobody else can see it. And he's got a type of screen that you can't see it from angles, so jurors are not going to be seeing anything. But I need to be able to, and Ms. Little and Mr. Giannetti need to be able to prepare with him. And I think the court.
No, I understand that. I don't have a problem with that. It's the 4 monitors on the tables, one on the bench, one for the court. We're in a small room.
And we won't do that.
And I'm concerned about the amplifying sound. I mean, is it like movie theater sound? I mean, it's, again, a tiny room at your request.
He uses very modest speakers that are appropriate for the space. So for instance, in this space, it would be probably a couple of speakers that are larger so that the jurors can hear, or the court can hear. In a small space, he'll just pare it down and use small speakers. And there's a switch. So for instance, he sets up, he will work with Commonwealth's AV expert, and there's a switch on both tables. When it's my turn, switch, and now.
All right, so is that switch, are you putting wires? I mean, these are all the things that I shouldn't be dealing with. I mean, we just got Wi-Fi in this building a week ago. I mean, it's not a building that,
I understand.
We can just last minute. It's a beautiful old historic building. We want to keep it that way. So,
and we will not mess anything up. As a matter of fact, I was told that by the Commonwealth that she uses switches, consistently. That's not new technology. It's very simple. It just allows both of us to be able to prepare with the audio-visual portion of the case more seamlessly. That's all. We just want to make it more seamless and more professional for the court and for the jurors.
So it would be during your case in chief?
It would be during my cross-examination of every one of the witnesses. I mean, the bulk of the case is going to be the Commonwealth's case in chief.
All right, with exhibits that are already into evidence, you're not trying to enter exhibits during cross-examination?
I mean, unless it's an impeachment that I didn't see coming. But even in that case, my habit and practice, my custom and practice would be to approach, if it's a matter in controversy, or tell the Commonwealth in advance, I'm about to show this photograph. Do you have any issue with it? No, I don't. And then we'll show it. But I would never, the point of it is not to ambush anybody. It's just to make what is going to be shown and what's allowed to be shown seamless and more professional looking.
Does the Commonwealth and Ms. Gilman have an opportunity to spend a little time today to take a look at it and see? I mean, everybody's preparing for trial, obviously. Again, this is, I don't have the time to do it, and I understand if you don't, but.
I think Ms. Gilman can spend some time. She actually had made arrangements to meet Mr. Bates here last Friday, and he didn't appear when we were told he was going to be here. So, but I'm happy to have Ms. Gilman.
Ms. Gilman, are you willing to spend some time today? Thank you.
By the way, just on Mr. Bates's defense, yes, he was supposed to come last Friday. He was told he couldn't come because he hadn't gotten permission from this court yet.
Okay.
We did not.
Well, that makes sense, frankly.
I just don't want there to be a sort of a hanging chad where that's concerned. He didn't leave.
Well, especially where he didn't start out well, right? Being at council table during impanelment.
I understand that. And he's been told that that was inappropriate and obviously would never happen again.
All right, so some sort of ground rules. Only one counsel, whoever's doing the cross-examination of the witness, objects. Just one, not all of you. It's not a tag team. So one person objects. If you want to approach the witness, you must ask permission. At sidebar, there will only be one person talking again, and it'll follow with whoever does the examination. Many times I allow counsel to discuss things, and many times I call directly on maybe appellate counsel or counsel who's been the big law person. So you can ask me for permission for that, and no basis for your objection. You just simply object. That's it. And if we need to see you at sidebar, we'll see you at sidebar. But I don't want a whole litany of reasons why the testimony you think is inadmissible. So those are pretty standard rules. I'd like to see counsel at sidebar regarding a jury issue.
Just a sec. Hold on for a second.
This will be a taste for what the trial is actually like. There's going to be a lot of sidebars, and a sidebar can be 2 minutes. It can be 20 minutes. It can be tough to go through if you're watching. And unfortunately, watching a real trial is not like watching a movie, but it should be interesting. So I have a lot of notes here. So I do still have the volume on. So as soon as the judge starts talking again, I'll shut the hell up and get off. I have extensive notes. This was a tiring morning because there was a lot going on, but it was very, very interesting. There's a lot of stuff to go on. And if I miss something, I'll probably, well, maybe, I don't know, we'll see how if this sidebar looks like it's going to continue. But I did take pretty extensive notes on everything. Hopefully I can read my own writing. That's always an issue. I'm used to typing. So reading my own handwriting is a challenge. So we did, among lesser interesting things, we learned that Yannetti will be doing the opening statement for the defense. I would have assumed that the high-priced Alan Jackson was doing it, but they've made some kind of a decision to go with Yannetti. I'm curious as to why that is. Is it because Karen feels that a local attorney might have a better effect on these jurors? Don't know. But I'm surprised by that. I don't know what you guys think. Are you guys surprised that it's not going to be Alan Jackson? So Karen is not going to be allowed to go. Oh, getting a call unrelated to this case. Let me try to turn this off. This is another former Fed, Dave Jenkins, who is out in Ohio and he's a friend of mine, doesn't follow the Karen Reed case really. So he's obviously unaware that I'm even on. He follows some other cases that we do. Anyway, so Karen is not going to be allowed to go on this little field trip that the jurors do. We know they're going to 34 Fairview. I'm not sure if they're going to the waterfall. I know there was discussion on that, and I forget how it was resolved. But so she won't be allowed to go because of the security issues and possibly the influence it might have on the jury, I guess. So the Boston Magazine audio, this was the interview with Gretchen Voss, is 3 hours and 40 minutes. So the judge wants to know, will they be playing the whole thing or just parts of it? And it sounds like they didn't give him a clear answer, but most likely just parts of it. So this is going to be a long process for these jurors. They don't get to just get up and go to the bathroom whenever they want or sit there with a cup of coffee. You have to really be grateful for what jurors do in our system. There's also the ABC interview, but that one's only 15 minutes. The arrest video that we saw last week, where I know people are unhappy with me, but it seemed like, we'll see if and I have not silenced this, so if the audio comes back on the court, we'll hear it. But I thought he was very deceptive about what he described that video. But anyways, it looks like we're probably not going to see it. And as the judge said, you really only see mostly the computer monitor anyway, so we're going to just hear the audio from that. And I believe there's only going to be about a 2-minute portion that that the prosecution is going to play anyways. The prosecution had a lot of problem with reciprocal discovery, and primarily they're complaining about witnesses that the defense has submitted, but that is not giving enough contact information, or in some cases not giving the prosecution any idea what they're going to be testifying about. So this is both expert witnesses and witnesses that are not experts, that are just witnesses relevant to the case. So several of the witnesses that are just, for instance, possibly Mr. O'Keefe, people like that, the defense did not tell the prosecution what they're going to be testifying for. And the prosecution has a right to know. Then there's the expert witnesses. There's Rich Green. We have enough on that. There's Sheridan. This is a former pathologist that was hired by the defense, and he is probably going to testify that John was in a fight, that he was not hit by a vehicle, and that the arm wounds are from a dog. Now, then there are 4 other witnesses. One is this guy, Dr. Van E. And apparently he is going to, I believe what he is going to testify. All right, so this is related to the black box, the vehicle data. And the vehicle data measures, it's called K cycles. And I think this has to do with trying to determine the time. Because even though I've seen mixed reporting on this, the best that I could find after a month of researching black boxes, whoever thought I'd do that, was that the black box data does not come with a timestamp. It comes with all kinds of other information, but you have to determine the timestamp in some other way. So it's not like it's going to say accident event at such and such a time. It just doesn't work that way. At least that's my understanding. So there's a Trooper Paul, who the prosecution will bring in that will testify about the interpretation of that report. And in the meantime, the defense is going to bring in this guy, Dr. Van E. And he's just going to give a different interpretation of that information. That's the black box data. So that's all normal stuff that you see in a trial. Each side is going to bring in their experts. And it's up to the jury or us in the public as far as making our own determinations who we believe. And finally, there were the 3 experts that from a company called ARCA, A-R-C-C-A. Now, this is why this case is just one of the many reasons this case is so fascinating, troubling, unique. Those ARCA people were hired by the feds. They're part of a company that was hired by the feds. And so they're going to report, they are the Fed. So the feds hired them as crash reconstructionists. The state disputes as to whether that's part of their title. Now, I don't know. Is there such thing? You can get a PhD? Can you get a PhD in crash reconstruction? I don't know. When you go to the website of ARCCA, that is one of the things that they do is accident reconstructions. So these guys are 3 experts. Supposedly, they have their PhDs in related fields, but the state seems to be disputing. But I mean, these guys would never have been brought in if it wasn't for the feds, who are strangely working for the defense. Main issue from the problem was they don't know what each one of these people are. And this is just a matter of preparing for cross-examination, because apparently the 3 of them did this report together and then just signed it. So the report is from all 3 of them. So we don't know what each one of them worked on, and then also apparently no contact information so the prosecution can go talk to them. But as the judge said, get that information to the prosecution immediately, and then the prosecution can now send state troopers out to talk to them, which presumably they'll have to fly them out to wherever they are. The defense said they turned over what they had. The prosecution said they didn't. They go back and forth on that. The judge showed very little patience for the defense today, and she's known as a judge that favors defense teams. Some of it really, for the first time, seemed to suggest a little bit of, I'm going to call it bias, but bias is not the correct word. But she seems to be a lot more patient with Lowry and a lot less patient with the defense. But I think this is because this has been going on now for over a year, and she's kind of had it with a lot of the stuff that's gone on here. So it's reflected in sometimes she may be a little bit quick to come down against the defense for certain things. So apparently, as far as discovery material, the state issued their certificate of compliance saying they turned it all over about 2 weeks ago. And then the judge gave the defense 2 days to respond by handing over theirs, because they had a year to prepare that or more. And it sounds like they handed it over, but very incomplete, or not with all the contact data and stuff like that. And of course, things can still be submitted into. I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer, so we're all like going to law school here watching this, right? But it's not like the certificate of compliance is the end, and that, there are still things that can be submitted as they develop, I guess. I don't know what the rules are on that, so we'll have to get a lawyer on to talk about that. Little did a lot of the arguing on that. It seems like Little does the work for the defense, that kind of grunt work. And, I think Little seems to be really, really smart. She's just much earlier in her development of being comfortable in front of the judge. I'm sure that almost every lawyer goes through that until you get to a point where you've done enough trial work. So Yannetti and Jackson have done a lot of trial work, so they're more comfortable. But other than that, in some ways, Little seems like the brains behind the whole operation. But not that they're all capable, though. Let's see. Again, the ARCA stuff, that was from the feds. All right, moving forward. Discussion of bias. So the prosecution does not want anybody to be allowed to mention the existence of the internal affairs investigation of Michael Proctor. For obvious reasons, the defense wants to be able to say that. The reason the prosecution doesn't want to mention is because we have no idea what the predication of it was. We can guess that it was related to the material discovered by the feds, but we don't know, and we have no idea what their findings are. So it creates a prejudice against Michael Proctor and his testimony. This is a really interesting part of the debate. And it seems, fair from that side because it creates that bias. But however, the judge basically understood that the reason it was possibly important to explain this to the jury is that the very existence of the internal affairs investigation might impact his testimony because he might be afraid about his job, is what they're saying. So it's kind of something that we probably wouldn't thought of on our own. They're looking at very different issues here. And so I think the judge would agree that mentioning its existence in a way would be unfair since we don't know anything about the findings. However, to the extent that it might potentially influence Michael Proctor's testimony. Now, I'm not saying it does, and I doubt it does, but it's possibly fair for a jury to decide that. So it seems like she's allowing them to say, you can mention there's an investigation, but don't use the word internal affairs investigation or something along that lines. So it's funny, some of this hair splitting by a judge really almost has to be Solomonic, in its wisdom to try to come up with, ways of parsing that stuff. So Sergeant Lank, issues on that too. So Yannetti said there won't be any mentioning of Lank in the opening. They want to cross him on his connections to the Alberts, I guess. And basically the judge doesn't want this stuff, a lot of things like this, to be discussed until it comes out in evidence. So you can't really, if it's prohibited like this, you can't come forward and talk about it until it's developed in evidence, because it hasn't been sufficiently developed in evidence pretrial, I think would be a way to do it. And the judge will be able to question Chris Albert and Lank about some of this stuff voir dire. So that's on her own, not in front of the jury. So no material from the internal affairs investigation has been given over yet. So that's why it can't be mentioned.
We'll begin Monday morning at 10 o'clock. So we'll see everybody then.
All right, please.
Okay, so there you have it. Everything begins Monday at 10 o'clock in the morning. So let me continue going over notes. So there were apparently interviews sent to Michael Proctor, but separate from the internal affairs investigation. These were interviews that were, let's get this out. These were interviews that were from once the state found evidence of possible issues with Michael Proctor from the feds, they sent their own police to interview, their own troopers to interview him. So there was some worry that perhaps the defense had thought that those interviews, that material, whatever was in that was from the IA investigation, but it's not. And so the results of those interviews is in discovery, so the defense has access to it. So in talking about those rules, my impression was, and I know I want to be fair, and some of you guys, a lot of you guys are probably going to disagree with me on this, but I thought Larry was a little bit bumbling. He was really struggling to find his legal argument. And the judge kind of was being first of all, the judge was very patient with him, and then she even kind of helped him a little bit. So I don't know. Look, everybody's allowed to have a bad moment. But if that's an indication of what's going to happen during the trial, might be some cause for concern. But, you know, it was really bumbling over legal issues, over how the case law should be applied. So that may not be his strength. But there won't be any of that during the trial. There'll just be discussions of evidence. Or what, to the degree that there is stuff like that, it'll be in sidebar, so we won't hear about it. Oh, let's see. So the judge, like a lot of these things, had said these things won't be allowed in the opening, but if they develop during the trial, she may allow some of it. Then there was discussions about the blood drawing. The defense has issues saying that the way the blood was drawn at the hospital somehow didn't adhere to accredited procedures. This seems like a lot of nonsense to me, and I don't think the judge is going to do anything with that, because as the judge said, and as Larry said, well, if you got a problem with those procedures, we can go over that in cross. So, you know, the defense was basically just trying a Hail Mary to see if they could get that evidence dismissed. I'm not even really 100% sure what the relevance of the blood. I mean, yeah, so she was drunk, and I don't know really how that impacts the charge of second degree, you know, because second degree implies malicious intent. Does whether she was drunk or sober impact that? You know, legally, I don't know. But also, I think she only said that she had 4 drinks. So there could be an issue of credibility. If she said she had 4 drinks on TV, but then she's on video having 9, and her blood alcohol is like double the legal limit, she had more than 4. So it could be an issue of credibility with her. I don't know. Sequestration. So John's family has some. So the witnesses are normally sequestered. Doesn't mean they're put up at a hotel. It means they're not allowed to speak to anybody else about the case while the trial is going on, until after the trial is over. But the exception was made for the defense, and it's a partial exception. After the defense, and also the witnesses. Tom wants me, and hi, Tom, we missed you earlier. Thank you for coming back. Let me try to get this. All right. There we go. All right. So the witnesses are not allowed to attend the trial. So anybody that's on the witness list. So that's part of the sequestration. But an exception is made for John's family. After they testify, they're allowed to attend. There was also a strange moment, too, when the judge referred to Mr. John O'Keefe, John's dad, as being on the witness list. And the way she worded it was kind of a wow moment to me. She said, for some reason, Mr. O'Keefe is on the witness list. I mean, that seemed to really reflect how frustrated she's become over time with this defense team. If I'd be the defense team, I was like, wow, Not good, right? Not good. It's nothing's going to go our way. I played a lot of sports, if I was playing softball and a judge said something like that, I mean, an umpire said something like that before the game, I'd be like, damn, now I am not going to argue any close calls because it's not going to go my way, because and not necessarily because the judge is biased, like going into the trial, but because, so like in the softball example, let's say you play a doubleheader and the first game I've managed to get on the umpire's nerves by complaining too much. And then in the second game, the umpire says something in between the games that tells me he's not happy with me. I'm like, wow, I better tone it back because in this umpire is not going to give me a break, and I'm not going to get any close calls. So I get that feeling here that she's not going to give the defense any close calls. And I don't think it's because she doesn't like Alan Jackson or David Yannetti. I think she's just kind of had it with the games that the stunts they've been trying to pull for the last year. So, but who knows, right? But she has to be careful because that stuff could come up on appeal. She says for some reason, Mr. O'Keefe is on the witness list. She didn't have to add in that for some reason, because they weren't discussing whether or not he should be on the witness list. They were just discussing whether he should be allowed to sit in court. And she said he can. Then the next issue that came up, another just so many unique aspects of this case, was Morrissey. Does the defense plan on having the defense wanted to put Morrissey on the witness list to testify? So you actually have the DA come in and testify, the DA of this county, of this district. I don't know if that's ever happened before. I got to think it's extremely rare, if ever. And there were strict rules the judge had to go by. And you could see that there was some case precedent where the judge was saying, basically, if there are other ways to establish whatever it is the defense wants Morrissey to say, they have to use the other ways. So the only way that Morrissey will be allowed to testify by the judge is if that's the only way to get through what they need. So, and the judge has not ruled on it now. She's basically saying, let's see how it develops. Again, like a lot of these things. It's also possible that the defense will just, instead of having him testify, will just show the video of the little recording that he made in September, saying that that there was no conspiracy and that Colin was not in the house and Proctor didn't go to the crime scene. So those are things they want to talk about. So that really was a mistake, him doing that. I thought so at the time, and over time I've commented a little bit on that. I didn't think it was helpful, for one thing. I mean, all it really did was, yes, I understood the persecution that families were going through and why they wanted it, but that didn't help them really, other than just to show them that he's with them. But it wasn't going to influence the Turtle Riders. It wasn't going to make them tone down any of what they were doing. So, and then to go out there and start mentioning specific things like who was at the house and who wasn't, that's really unusual. I don't know why I don't know who encouraged him to do that in terms of legal advice, but my understanding, he said at the time that he took, I don't know who he took it to, whether it was to some board of lawyers or something. I don't know if it was maybe, I don't know. Did he take it to SJC lawyers? I really don't know. Or appellate board lawyers or something. I mean, I don't really know. So Berkowitz, this is interesting. So Chief Berkowitz, who was out on leave at the time, but was the chief, he was out on injury. He has since retired. He was, and I only say this, he has cancer, and I only say this is why the prosecution said they don't have him on their witness list. He didn't say cancer, he said ill health, but I know that it's cancer. And so Berkowitz called DA Morrissey at 8:30 in the morning. And they only know this because of the feds. So there's a lot we can discuss about this. First of all, how is it that the feds know about phone calls? Whose communications did they get here? Berkowitz's or Morrissey's? Did they subpoena those records? I've talked about a lot in this case. Apparently the feds, the way it works is if they send a request for communications to these communications companies, they are not legally bound to respond to them unless there's a subpoena. However, it's become their custom to just voluntarily give over the information. So your records, my communications. So if the feds ask for your communications, Verizon just gives it to them. Google just gives it to them. Now, I find that disturbing because there's no paper trail. We don't know why they asked for those communications. We don't know what they do with those communications. And presumably, it's kind of a fishing expedition. And if they don't find what they want, they just throw them out. And so it becomes, that evidence could be exculpatory for certain people. Like, say, in this case, could have been exculpatory to some of the people that are accused of being part of the conspiracy. The fact that the feds got their communications and found nothing. But without the paper trail, we don't know. We don't know how far back they looked. So they obviously got the communications of either or both Berkowitz and the DA Morrissey. And if there's no, I'm telling you, if there's no documentation of that, then heads need to roll. Something and laws need to change because that's unacceptable. All right. So from this, according to Yanni, this is when Berkowitz told Morrissey, informed him that Kevin Albert is a detective on the Canton Police Department. Meanwhile, that the accident took place on the lawn of his brother, Brian. And Yannetti says this is why it was conflicted out, is the way he called it. This is why it's transferred to the authority of the state police. But now I don't know what that conversation was. But every cop, everyone with a badge in every town in Massachusetts understands that the way it works in this state is that any suspicious death, doesn't even have to be identified as a murder, just any kind of a suspicious death, automatically goes to the state police. Unless it's in Boston, Worcester, and Springfield, because those three large cities have their own homicide departments. So this didn't get transferred to the state because it was conflicted out. It was automatically going there, and all the cops at the scene that morning knew that. Didn't have to be told to them. They knew that. They knew that it was going to the state police because it's automatic. So I don't know why he says that, but they've said it before. Maybe there was some reference in that call from Berkowitz to Morrissey. I don't know how we know that either, because so it says Berkowitz notified Morrissey. Does that mean he texted him? Does that mean he emailed him? Does that mean he TikToked him? Or does it mean he called him? Now, I'm sure if he texted him or emailed him or any kind of a textual message, it sounds like the feds can easily get that. But I don't know how the feds would know about a call. So if Berkowitz called Morrissey, I don't know how they would know. And I believe the way Yannetti worded it was Berkowitz notified Morrissey. So I don't know. I'm going to guess that it must have been a text, and that's why the feds know it, because it's not like the feds would have a copy of a recording of the call. So unless one of them testified before the federal grand jury, or at least did a report with the FBI. So I have never heard that Berkowitz or Morrissey have been called to testify before the federal grand jury. Now, it's possible they have, but I've never heard that. So my guess is it was probably a text from Berkowitz to Morrissey saying roughly what happened. So then discussion about, under Morrissey, whether Proctor was at the scene. And he's saying that Morrissey has created this biased opinion with the public and the potential jurors by saying that Proctor was not at the scene. Now, look, Proctor was not at the scene. All right. This sounded like they're saying that Trooper Proctor at some point wrote that he was at the scene, but that he was talking about the scene where the car was brought to. And there's another point where Trooper Garino in his report refers to Michael Proctor being at the scene at 34, but it's on that day. But it's clearly not because Trooper Garino was there. He's just kind of writing a report, and he was thinking that the Trooper Proctor was there, but he really didn't know when Trooper Proctor was there. But the idea that Trooper Proctor went there when there was multiple other state police there and nobody recognized him and has come forward to say, no, that's a lie. He was there. I don't believe that. And the feds got Proctor's all of his messages on his phone and his phone data going back a long time. So I'm pretty sure the feds would be able to track his GPS. I'm not sure about that because they have communications. So but I think his phone was turned in at one point, right? Under the Rule 17 thing that was filed like in January related to, I think it began because of Jen McCabe going to visit Elizabeth Proctor. So I think they did hand over the phone. So they probably have the GPS. So they would know by the GPS whether Proctor went there. But you know in other ways. You have his testimony. There's no reason to think he lied on that. He's still working on the job. He hasn't been charged with perjury. So there's just no evidence to think that he went there. And I think there's substantial evidence that shows he didn't. Let's see. So there's, again, Lally said it's not proper to call to call Morrissey on direct exam. If the state was to call him, which they're not, then they could call him on rebuttal for cross exam. But no. The defense is also talking about this being a Bowden issue. Bowden is basically related to the third party culprit, but in a specific way. It's the idea that there was evidence that somebody else did it, but law enforcement didn't pursue it. That's the Bowden defense. That's my understanding of it in a nutshell. Now, did you notice Lally used the word proffer? Good thing he didn't use it in the same sentence as Higgins, because Sean would be going crazy. I tell you, he'd be going crazy. Sean would be like, it's a proffer. See, I told you, the federal proffer. There's other ways that the word proffer is used. And it's basically, it doesn't mean a deal. In certain contexts, it could mean a deal with his immunity, right? But it just means there's an official communication. So you can't, and so for you to lie in it would be perjury. Maybe we'll get Grant on sometime to talk more about that. If he's covered that in law school yet, he probably has. So he probably knows more about that. So the judge said these issues can be revisited, but she described it as a stretch. So it's extremely, at this point, it's a stretch for the judge to allow Morrissey, for the defense to call Morrissey to testify. And boy, this actually got to the last note page in this notebook. Wow, I'm going to have to buy more notebooks for this trial and learn how to scribble better. But my last note was that the judge is pissed. And there was a lot of talk about that. The defense wants to have their own AV guy so they can have access to slides in a way that would be a smoother transition for them. And I think the judge is annoyed that this is coming in at a very late hour. And it just causes hardship. One more thing that they have to figure out, especially where they're moving into a different courtroom. So, on the surface of it, I think it's reasonable and I have a little different perspective on that, just because when you're trying to give a presentation here and I have to present a slideshow, it can be difficult. You're trying to talk, and at the same time, you're trying to advance to the right slide. In my case, I'm generally doing it by myself. So that makes it a challenge, but I do understand the value of one. So if I'm going to call, in fact, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to call up a video to show an example. So this is a video that, an animation that I had made, and you see how long it takes. So we'll stop this here for a second. This is, Crazy Cat wanted to see this video. So this was a video, an animation that I had made last September. And I no longer believe this is the most likely explanation, but we still don't know what the accident reconstruction is going to be, or what the state's claim is that it's going to be, and whether it's going to be convincing. It's not meant to be, turtle riders get confused. It's not meant to be lifelike. You notice there's no snow, there's no flagpole. It's not a Hollywood reproduction. It's what I could what I could afford to get some guy in Pakistan to make. The car that comes is not an SUV. Obviously, I know that it was an SUV. He couldn't make an SUV. And it's coming on the wrong side of the road because it's in Pakistan where they drive on the other side of the road. The idea was just to give people a possible way that the injury could have. What was troubling me was how could John have got struck in the back of the head by the vehicle without the vehicle creating a significant damage to his shoulder or his back. And it was, all summer I was trying to figure that out. And then it just occurred to me, I think I was bending over to let the dogs out of the crates when it occurred to me, like, if he was bent over picking something up, that could do it, right? Because if you're really in a position of bent down, and the injury to John's head is kind of almost, it's above the crown, so it's on the back but near the top of the head. So it's not like he had to be bent completely over. So my idea was, could he possibly have been bending over to pick up something? Now, we used here the cocktail glass, but in actuality, my idea is that he had the cocktail glass in his right hand, and he's right-handed. So he's got the drink in his right hand, as any right-handed person would be. And he had put his phone in his right-hand pocket earlier, as that's where normally you put it when you're right-handed. He's wearing jeans. And then Jen McCabe had called him at 12:29. I think the call connected for 8 seconds. And she also had texted him at 12:31. I might have those reversed. Maybe she called at 12:31 and texted at 12:29. I forget. But anyways, she had communicated with him. So he may have been just gotten out of the car. And when he gets the call, he reaches over with his left hand. And if you've ever tried to use your left hand to pull your phone out of jeans that are out of the right side pocket, it's difficult. And so I was thinking maybe he dropped his phone and bent over to pick it up, all while trying not to spill the drink. And that's what she backed up. But, again, I'm not saying that that's the best explanation. Now, this was an explanation that I came up with at the time because it was what had gone on, how those injuries troubled me then and troubled me now. There are, looking more closely at the charging document, there is a reference to traumatic injury to the pancreas. So maybe we'll see that. Maybe we'll see some bruising on the side. We need to hear this testimony. And Lally indicated last week that it was not the state's theory that John's head broke the taillight. But that doesn't mean this completely doesn't work, because he said the taillight did not cause the head injury. He didn't say the vehicle didn't. So is it possible that he was bent over and the car hit the glass at a high speed, so that broke off the outer layer of the taillight, and his head hit some other part of the vehicle? I don't know that. So it is difficult to imagine. So let's just be honest about that. So let me play the video for you. So again, that's not exactly the way I imagined it. The way I imagine it would be the car would be coming from the other side, and the arm with the glass in it. So the glass would hit the vehicle first, but it's coming at high speed, so it hits that and drives through it, and that it hit his head while he was bent over. Again, I'm not arguing that now. This was a video that I put out in September. I don't think it had a lot of people believe in it. So, and that's on either side. Well, certainly on the Free Karen Reed side, because they think John was mauled by a dog and attacked by multiple people inside the house, and then implausibly carried out and deposited on the lawn hours later on top of his phone. That's it. I couldn't afford that kind of video. But this was just an idea about maybe how it possibly happened. We'll show it one more time, then we'll get rid of it. But again, so the way I saw it, the glass is in his hand and he bends over to pick up the phone. This was just all I could make. And then somehow it hits him in that. You notice how the head, he's kind of half bent down, and the injury is. So one thing that AFTAB in Pakistan got right on this was the look where the vehicle strikes his head. That's where the injury is. So who really knows? We shall see soon, right? I mean, we shall see what the state thinks. So let's see what else we got. I just want to remind everybody that for those of you who are dying to meet Tom Fleming virtually, you're going to get to do it tonight because we're having an NFL draft show. This is just for fun. So please join us. We can discuss anything in the sports world. You want to discuss the Celtics? We can do that. You want to discuss Caitlin Clark, who's just got a record sneaker contract? We can discuss that. But nothing in the world of true crime. No Karen Reed. Let's avoid that tonight and just have some fun. Dave McGrath will be here, and my friend Brian Vick from New York City. He's a Raiders fan. He's a Yankees fan, Knicks fan, Islanders fan. But as far as the NFL, he has no use for the Jets. So or the Giants. He is a Raiders fan. So, but he's a wealth of knowledge about the draft. Just getting another report from somebody with their own accident theory. Well, let's check this out. This is somebody. I won't mention their name just in case they don't want to, but this is someone that's just sending me their own theory. All right, let's check this out. Let's see if this is good. My theory is that John was standing sideways, but at a slight angle. His back was to the house, and he was facing the street. Yep, I agree with that. The back corner of Karen's car hit his right arm, which was bent holding the cocktail glass. Yep, that's my theory too. His elbow shattered the taillight. So his elbow shattered the taillight, and the jagged edges caused the abrasion of his bicep and forearm. Yeah, I agree with all that. Some glass fell onto the bumper. The impact caused his body to twist, where his back was now against the side of Karen's car. Yes, this is what I agree with this. His head smacked somewhere on the right quarter panel, where the hair was ultimately found. He was thrown onto the lawn landing face up. Hope this makes sense. Thank you very much for that. This is a person, White Rabbits. Let's go with that. That's not really given their name. I agree with that 100%. I wish I could have had that animation made, but that is a succinct explanation of my theory on this. And I've even looked at, I've even looked at other things, like some of these SUVs have a little lip overhang on the back. Could that have caused the injury? I don't know, but White Rabbit, he or she is correct that where the hair is found. So it would, listen, I don't want to, this personalizes it too much, but it'll feel kind of good if what White Rabbit says comes true, because that's pretty much what I theorized back in September. And so that it'll be kind of cool. It's kind of cool when you put out a difficult answer to the exam and it turns out to be right. It didn't always happen to me in school, so it's kind of cool if that happens in this case. But so yeah, we'll be live tonight. Me, Tom, Dave McGrath, and Brian Vick. And Tuesday. So I heard this is the Tuesday that I heard on Roberta's show that they did a fine job. Maybe it was a week ago. I forget. But my mother was a fan of both of you guys, and now she listens to every show. And so my mom is your number one fan. So if you sell T-shirts, if you sell merch, like Sean, I guess I should buy her one for Mother's Day. Coffee Kristen says, I'm not sure what happened, but this is what it's going to be like for the free Karen readers as more people start coming in who are less well adjusted to the grift in this case. Yep. Crazy Cat was the one who asked me for this video. I haven't showed it on the channel for a long time. Said, yes, there are a few possibilities, but they keep telling me how a car could cause those injuries. Oh, but I'm sorry, they keep saying how, yeah, they do keep saying that. And and so at this point, I've kind of satisfied myself with, let's wait and see. When I was able to get a question many months ago to Michael Proctor, and I would never ask a question that would compromise the investigation, and he would never give up anything. I wouldn't even want to, so it's not like that. So the one question that I was able to get and that I knew wouldn't compromise it just was this: does the state have an accident reconstruction theory, and are they confident in it? That sounded like two, right? I think the way I asked it was, does have an accident reconstruction theory that they are confident in? And he confidently said yes. And that was the extent of it. So I don't think that jeopardizes anything, because he didn't tell me anything about what it is. I don't even know if he knows what it is, to tell you the truth. These investigations are very compartmentalized. Everybody does their little piece. So the CERT team comes in. It's called the CERT team, and they do the investigation at the scene. Then in the garage, there is the chem team. I think they come in first, and they go over that vehicle every square inch for looking for any kind of evidence. And then the cars teams comes in, CARS, and those are the people that know how to work on vehicles. And so they go over, they take it out and test it, for example. They take it out to find out what was, whether all the sensors and alarms work and that kind of thing. So we're hearing that they may have even taken it back to the crime scene, which is standard, but I'm not sure about that. But that is, from my research, that in a pedestrian accident like this, it's standard, it's recommended to take the vehicle back to the crime scene. And if you can't do that, then to take the same model of vehicle. So I'm not sure what they did here, but there is some indication they may have done that. So I'm just going to take one more question, then I got to go have lunch. It's been a long day, and I got to get ready for the show for tonight. Frank says, Kevin, so they did not find his hair on the corner panel. Maybe he was bent over and his shoulder. I honestly am not 100% sure where they found the hair. So we'll have to find out during the trial. I didn't focus on specifically where the hair was, but maybe I should have. That should have probably told us more information. I don't know. Roberta does not have merch. So if anybody wants Roberta Glass merch, you'll have to make it up yourself for now. But I can show you how to make it. It's pretty easy and free, or it costs like $1 a month to set it up. And you can use, I have zero ability for graphic arts, but you don't need it anymore because the AI tools that are out there are incredible. And you can make almost anything you want. And then you just take it and you set it up on like some of these countries that do made to order t-shirts. So you wouldn't have to order any merch. You wouldn't have to order anything. You just sign up for these sites, and then you put your art into the site and you put it up for sale. Now, the thing that kind of stinks about it is to make a t-shirt. I have mine up there too, but I never push them because, and I don't even know if I don't even mention them. I made it last summer, and you can still get them, but it's like $25 for a t-shirt. And the people that I knew that ordered them said they're really good quality, but it just seems like crazy money for that. So I don't really push it. And if this, it's $25 for a t-shirt that I make like 99 cents off of. So, anyways, but if you want to do that, because it is a kind of cool thing, at least your friends and family can get those shirts. And even though you might not make any money off it, it's cool that they have your shirt. You might only make 99 cents. It's pretty cool, but you can let me know about that if that's something that you're interested in. Where were the microscopic taillight pieces were on his clothes. Yep. So Pat says the SUV lip, unless the hair was embedded in the bumper. So that was his theory. So you know about that lip too. I've seen that on certain SUVs. It's got that lip, but it's pretty high up too. So, but yeah, so I didn't know, like, if he's trying to, in the twisting body thing, I tried to imagine if you were struck in the side, if you twisted, would that be enough to hit that lip on the top of the SUV? It might be, because John was 6'2", and I'm exactly 6'2" myself. So I'm actually the exact same size as John. I'm 6'2", 220. He was just better looking, but I'm the same height, so it's easy for me to kind of, I go and stand next to an SUV and I try to imagine the scenarios because I'm exactly the same size as John O'Keefe. So before I check off, Tom, is there anything you want me to say about tonight? Should we challenge people to make mock drafts or something like that? Is anybody here even interested in the NFL draft? I mean, we're doing it no matter what, but I know a lot of people that are here maybe just follow true crime. Lori wants a sweatshirt. I mean, I'll go. I mean, I haven't even looked, but they're still up there. Maybe I should make some new ones. But unfortunately, I don't even know what a sweatshirt is. It's probably gonna be like $35 or something. But yeah, I'll put the links up later. There was a couple of t-shirt companies that I put them in. I'll have to go and check and make sure they still work. But and I had a couple of different designs too. I had one where I could probably make better ones now because these AI programs have advanced so much. Every couple months, something new comes out. Kathy, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I actually just, you know what? I ordered some Yellow Cottage Tales t-shirts for Christmas for my brother's family. But then my mom wouldn't let me give them to the family because she didn't want them to know about the channel. So I didn't. So I actually have like 3 or 4 Yellow Cottage t-shirts now that are a little too small for me because I got them for the girls. And the girls are old enough. One of them's in college, one's a senior in high school. But my mom didn't think that it was appropriate for and there's nothing graphic on it. It just has my channel name. But I made this little thing that shows like on the back, it shows, I forget what it was, like showed eyeglasses and like one of those old style hats, like a fedora. And so I had that on it and it said Yellow Cottage Tales around it or something like that. I don't know. Oh, let me see. Tom did reply, so I missed that. So I see what he said. So Tom says, if you have any picks, preferences, predictions about the NFL chat, please get to it. Obviously, this is a huge one for the Patriots, right? So just come in and have some fun with us. Roberta Glass says her family is definitely not going to be wearing her t-shirts. They aren't fans. Why aren't they fans? You don't do anything controversial. At least that I haven't seen. You know, every once in a while I lose my temper. So that's why my mother doesn't want my brother's family knowing about this. She always thinks I'm on the edge of losing my temper. And sometimes she watches your show more than she does mine. She's afraid to watch mine because she thinks I'm going to lose my temper. And I don't lose my temper that often. So I don't know why, but guess when I lose it, sometimes it gets loud. So she's worried about that. So, all right, guys. So this is how I guess today is roughly how the trial is going to go. A lot of work. Because you don't want to miss anything. You got to take notes and you got to come up and recap it. And I'm told that a lot of like interesting and somewhat important people are saying that they want to see my recap on this, which really puts pressure on me because I'm just an old bar owner. I don't have a law degree. I've never been in law enforcement. So it kind of puts a little pressure on me to make sure I get it right. And I don't have time to run it by anybody. So I don't know. But I think Tom is going to help me too. There are going to be days that I go for scans and treatments. So Tom Fleming will take over. But that means he won't be able to moderate it because he'll be doing something else. So we'll have to find someone to moderate. So we'll have to get another moderator to moderate for Tom. So somebody wants to help, we can add as many moderators as you want. So if somebody likes doing that kind of thing, reach out to us and we'll set you up as a moderator. I won't be gone all of those days either. One of them is a scan day. The other one's a treatment days. So I'll be here like in the morning in time to set it up, but then I'll have to leave. And so those days I won't be able to do a recap either. Probably not, unless I'm able to, maybe when I'm getting treatments, they'll actually play it in there for me instead of like rock music or something like that. I'll say, can you put on the Karen Reed hearing? When I was there getting treatments in March, none of them knew what Karen. I talked to one person, was a tech that was setting up the IV. It was a guy, nice guy. He was in his 50s, and he said, "Oh, what do you do?" I said, "Well, I'm not. I'm mostly doing YouTube right now." And he goes, "Oh, what do you do?" I said, "True crime." He goes, "Oh, I love true crime." He said, "What case you covering?" I said, "Well, I'm doing a lot on this Karen Reed case now. This is in Boston." And he was like, "What?" He had never heard of it. So we get kind of a distorted sense of how big this is in the mind of the public. It's bigger probably now than it was then because it's getting more coverage on local news and now national news, but it's not like the OJ case in that way at all. There are not the OJ case. Like I saw that just the Bronco chase alone, that 103 million people just inside this country tuned into the Bronco chase. And the country's population then was 300 million. So 1/3 of this country watched the Bronco chase live. And this is before you had YouTube or anything like that, where people on notifications, it was just people tuning in on their TV. I remember it. So, and then I think it was a similar number that watched the trial, watched the verdict, that kind of thing. So this is nothing like that. There are similarities in terms of the local circus that's been created. I think some of the techniques that the defense is going to use is going to be very similar, but other than that, it's very, very different. So, yes, Nicole, I don't know, did you have a chance to try that out? So Ideogram is the one that I use for a lot of them. There's a free in the Bing, which is run by, so it's called Copilot inside Bing. You can use it for different things, but it's ChatGPT run. And that includes a pretty good art generator it's unlimited. You can use it as much as you want. The only thing with it is, well, it's much more, has a lot more breaks put on it, parameters. So for instance, you can't, if I put in the word zombie, which doesn't seem offensive, right? If I put that into the Bing one, it says that my content, my request breaks their rules. I forget how it's worded, bad content or something like that. So somehow zombie is offensive to Bing's ChatGPT. And also it's not very good at doing a big development over the last year is, so let's say you made a sign. I did one today, zombies in front of the courthouse. Actually, I made one that was kind of cool that I used AI to bring to life. So it's about 5-second video of them dancing in front of the courthouse. So you can find that on Twitter. But the AI has struggled to learn how to do letters. So if you do, like, let's say Roberta Glass, let's say you want to make a t-shirt up that says Roberta Glass. A lot of these AI programs can make brilliant art, but they can't do that, or they won't get the letters right. They'll get the spelling wrong 9 out of 10 times. But there's other way, but some of them, this one Ideogram is pretty good at it. And you can do a free Karen Reed poster. It's not 100%, but it gets it enough that you can use it. But in addition, you can take the art you've made, if you don't have any lettering in it, and then go to a free program like Adobe Express or Canva, and then just add whatever you want to say over that and adjust the size, put whatever font you want, adjust the colors, that kind of thing. I use Adobe Express a lot, but I sometimes use Canva. That's good too. So it's kind of cool. There are things you can do with it. I'm not a graphic artist. I don't even like doing that stuff, but I've learned how to make thumbnails and that kind of thing because it's pretty easy. So now that I can make a thumbnail for something in like 5 minutes. So it's pretty cool. All right, guys. So I'm going to say goodnight for tonight. And Roberta, reach out to me if you want to do something. And everybody else, hopefully we'll see you at 7:30 for the draft.